Chapter 558. Within the Blue Moon ancient castle, other than the chosen bride, no other woman could remain there. They would all be teleported out. In order to not cause panic among the girls, the existence of the Blue Moon Duke had always been a secret. Other than the Notre Dame du Starlight, the Star Hall's upper echelons, and the four great empires' emperors, only a few ancient aristocratic families knew about it. It wasn't that no one wanted to eliminate the Blue Moon Duke, but the location of the Blue Moon Castle was too secretive. No one knew how to get there, so even if they wanted to fight, they couldn't. This time, Feng Wu received an invitation from the Blue Moon Duke. As an insider, a juror expressed that he was in a bad mood. That was the Blue Moon Duke. As long as the bride was chosen by the Blue Moon Duke, no one would be able to leave alive. Blue Moon Castle. In the past, there was a noblewoman who received an invitation. She tried her best to escape the fate of being taken to the Blue Moon Castle. She placed her invitation card on her personal maid. When the time was up, she hoped that her maid could replace her and be sent into the Blue Moon Castle. Unfortunately, the one who was sent to the Blue Moon Castle was still her. Even if she didn't have the invitation on her, the one who was taken away was still the person invited on the invitation. There were also people who tried to destroy the invitation. Unfortunately, they didn't know what material the invitation was made of. It was impervious to fire and water, so it couldn't be destroyed. In the hearts of all the women who knew about it, the Blue Moon Castle's wedding invitation was undoubtedly the death notice of the Grim Reaper. It made people's expressions change and they were terrified. There were even some girls who couldn't accept this fact and couldn't stand the pressure. They killed themselves before going to the Blue Moon Castle. Now that Feng Wu received an invitation that symbolized the arrival of the Grim Reaper, how could a juror not be frightened? Even if he believed that he wasn't afraid of anything, he had to admit that compared to those old monsters who had lived for God knows how many years, his strength was really not enough. What's wrong? Feng Wu blinked in confusion. A juror's sudden roar gave the Feng Wu girl a fright. The young girl opened her big black eyes wide, revealing a serious look in her eyes. Xiao Wu, you're in big trouble. A juror also knew that this kind of thing could not be hidden. Instead of hiding it, it was better to tell the Feng Wu girl from the beginning so that she could be mentally prepared. Therefore, after thinking for only 3 seconds, a juror decided to tell Feng Wu everything. After all, as the person involved, Feng Wu had the right to know. While a juror was telling Feng Wu about the Blue Moon Castle, Zicheng was holding the same wedding invitation in puzzlement. She didn't have any friends who lived in a place called Blue Moon Castle. Who sent her an invitation? No matter how hard he tried, Zicheng couldn't figure out who it could be. Since she couldn't figure out who sent the invitation, she didn't think too much about it. She casually placed the invitation on the table and left the dormitory. She chatted and laughed with Eve and the others as they went out to eat. Such a big thing happened to Feng Wu, of course, it was impossible to hide it. At the first moment, a juror made the decision to inform Ming Shi. After Ming Shi knew what had happened, a heavy look flashed across his eyes. If it wasn't for a juror mentioning it, he would have forgotten that the 100-year period had arrived. It was time for the Duke of Blue Moon to choose a bride. His little girlfriend was actually chosen by the Duke of Blue Moon. This could be said to be a heavy blow to Ming Shi. What kind of person was the Duke of Blue Moon? As the successor of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom, Ming Shi couldn't possibly not know. He was even more clear about what it meant to receive an invitation. He clearly knew that by the time the invitation was sent to Feng Wu, it was already too late. No one could stop Feng Wu from being taken away, not even his imperial father. However, the Blue Moon Castle wasn't a place that was impossible to go. As long as there was a moon, it wasn't a forbidden area for the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom. Blue Moon Castle, whether it was the Demon Realm, the Underworld, or even the High and Mighty God Realm, he would definitely go there and bring Feng Wu back. Not long after Ming Shi received the news that Feng Wu was chosen by the Duke of Blue Moon, Ming Shi actually returned to school in less than a day. The first thing he did when he returned was to bring Feng Wu to his room. Ming Shi. Feng Wu blinked her big eyes, somewhat puzzled. Be good. Close your eyes and don't ask anything. Ming Shi said. Okay. Feng Wu obediently closed her eyes. She couldn't see that the moment she closed her eyes, Ming-Shi took out a small knife that emitted a cold light from his chest. He used the small knife to cut his finger. From the tip of Ming-Shi's finger, a drop of golden blood actually flew out. He directly dripped this drop of blood into Feng Wu's forehead. Strangely, after the drop of golden blood came into contact with Feng Wu's skin, it didn't fall down. Instead, it directly entered between Feng Wu's eyebrows. Feng Wu didn't feel any discomfort. Instead, she felt a kind of relaxed and comfortable feeling. She felt as if her entire consciousness was surrounded by a very comfortable feeling. It was extremely comfortable. Ming-Shi saw the drop of blood enter between Feng Wu's eyebrows and the corner of his lips curled up in satisfaction. By the time Feng Wu opened her eyes, Ming-Shi had already put away the small knife. Even the small wound used to drip the blood had disappeared. Xiao Wu, no matter where you go in the future, I will be able to find you. Ming-Shi pulled Feng Wu into his embrace and said this seriously. Okay. Feng Wu nodded in confusion. Her eyes were filled with doubt and puzzlement. Not many people knew that Feng Wu had received a wedding invitation from Blue Moon Castle. Other than Ming-Shi and a juror who knew the true meaning of this wedding invitation, everyone else treated it as an ordinary wedding invitation. Hua Jin also didn't know that Feng Wu had encountered a huge crisis. If she was unlucky, Feng Wu might have to stay in Blue Moon Castle forever without needing her to do anything. She was still planning to remove Feng Wu from Ming-Shi's heart forever so that Ming-Shi wouldn't care about her anymore. 3 days before the date on the invitation, Feng Wu and the two ladies, Annie and Zilda, went shopping for clothes outside the school. It was said that a woman's wardrobe was always lacking a piece of clothing. This saying wasn't false at all. Zilda was fine as she walked the path of a tomboy, but Annie was definitely a normal beauty. This lady's favorite thing to do was to shop for clothes and all kinds of cosmetics and skincare products. Ever since Zicheng came to this world, he had developed Earth's culinary culture in this place. In addition, he had also incorporated modern fashion design concepts and designed many clothes that were madly loved by the women of Heavenly Wind. He also had women's cosmetics and skincare products, which were the main reason why she was able to earn a lot of money. Chapter 559. Ever since Zicheng came to this world, she developed Earth's culinary culture in this place. She also combined modern fashion design concepts and designed many clothes that were madly loved by the women of Heavenly Wind continent. She also designed women's cosmetics and skincare products, which helped her earn a lot of money. She even dabbled in the design of jewelry. The current Zicheng was already a very wealthy woman. Most of the small nobles in the school might not even be as wealthy as her. However, not many people knew about this. Only a few of Zicheng's trusted aides knew about her businesses. The place where Feng Wu and the rest came to buy clothes was a clothing store opened by Zicheng in the central city called Shangyi Pavilion. The interior of the store was very high-end. When the three of them entered, there were many customers looking at clothes. The female staff in the store were all wearing the same uniform with a smile on their faces, giving people a feeling of being at home. Once Anika entered the store, she ran to choose clothes. Although Silda was a tomboy, she was still very nervous about her face. Thus, she also went to the store next door to choose some sunscreen products. Swordmasters often practiced their swordsmanship outdoors, so their skin was either darker or a healthy wheat color. There were very few women who had truly fair skin. Feng Wu's snow-white skin was also very rare in the swordmaster department. After all, not every girl was born beautiful and wouldn't get tanned no matter how much they tanned. If one was afraid of getting too dark, skin care was very important. Zicheng Store's set of essential sunscreen products for female swordmasters had been popular ever since they were put on the shelves. Don't think that these sunscreen products were the same as the ones on Earth. This was a high-grade formula that she bought from the system store with points. The sunscreen effect was superb, which was why it was so popular. To be honest, in Heavenly Wind continent, there was no market for those expensive sunscreen products that didn't have obvious effects. This was a magical world. If you couldn't let people see the effects as soon as possible, who would buy your things? In short, because Zicheng had the system as a cheat, he was like a fish in water in the Heavenly Wind continent, earning a huge sum of money. Seeing that they had all left, Feng Wu stood there for a minute, then decisively turned around and went straight to the stall selling stinky tofu not far away. This stinky tofu was naturally made by Zicheng, and it was sold very well. It was unknown how many people liked to eat it, and if they wanted to buy a portion every day, they would have to line up in a long line to buy it. After waiting in line for more than 20 minutes, Feng Wu successfully bought a portion of stinky tofu. She sat in front of the Shangyi pavilion and ate with relish. After eating the last piece of stinky tofu, Feng Wu was thinking about whether or not she should buy a big meat bun to eat. However, she didn't expect that someone would block her way. The one who stopped Feng Wu was not a bully, nor was it a handsome man trying to hit on her. Instead, it was a kid who did not even reach the height of Feng Wu's thigh. "Big sister, there's a big brother who wants me to give this to you," the little fellow said in a childish voice as he took out an envelope. Seeing Feng Wu expressionlessly accept it, the little fellow immediately turned around and ran away. Feng Wu opened the envelope in confusion. Inside was a piece of blank paper, and it was signed by Mo Gue. It said that Mo Gue wanted to meet her outside the city, and that he had something important to tell her. Feng Wu fell silent, then decisively called Mo Gue. Mo Gue had just finished his daily training and returned to the dormitory. He hadn't even had the time to take a bath or eat a good meal when he received the Feng Wu girl's request for training. "Xiao Wu, what's the matter?" Mo Gue weakly answered the call. Forgive him, but he really didn't want to talk. He was so tired that he couldn't even climb the stairs. In order to increase his stamina, he had to do some extra training every day. This training list was drawn up for him by his teacher out of kindness. Although he had always suspected that his teacher was purposely trying to prank him, it was a pity that he didn't have any drama to prove it. "You were looking for me?" Feng Wu asked. "No." When did he look for Feng Wu? Didn't he just see her in class this morning? Mo Gue blinked in confusion, not understanding why the Feng Wu girl would ask this. "You wrote this?" Feng Wu expressionlessly waved the letter in her hand. "What's this? Open it and let me take a closer look." Mo Gue's expression changed. He realized that something was wrong. Could it be that some grandson wanted to use his name to swindle the Feng Wu girl? The Feng Wu girl obediently opened the letter so that he could clearly see what was written on it. After reading the 10 lines, Mo Gue felt unwell. There really was a grandson who dared to use his name to swindle the Feng Wu. "I definitely didn't write this. Xiao Wu, don't believe any letters like this in the future. If I wanted to find you, I would have used the communication crystal to contact you. Why would I write a letter? Also, it doesn't look like my handwriting." Mo Gue was quite angry. Someone actually used his name to scheme against Feng Wu. This was simply unforgivable. If he found out who did it, he would definitely beat the person up so badly that even their mother wouldn't recognize them. No matter how bloody and violent he felt, he hurriedly said a bunch of things to the Feng Wu girl. He was afraid that the ignorant girl would be tricked by those vicious swindlers. "I know you didn't write it," Feng Wu said. "Ah. How could you tell?" The Feng Wu girl had actually become smarter. She could even tell that the letter wasn't written by her. Mo Gue felt that it was incredible. "Your handwriting isn't that good," the Feng Wu girl said in all seriousness and even nodded her little head seriously. Mo Gue instantly felt like he had received 10,000 points of damage. Was his handwriting that bad? In the Feng Wu girl's heart, his handwriting was actually worse than a swindler's. "Since you already realized that I didn't write it, why did you still contact me?" Mo Gue swallowed a mouthful of blood and asked helplessly. "To confirm," the Feng Wu girl said. Mo Gue. Half an hour later, the 2 girls who had made Feng Wu wait for a long time finally came out of the shop after buying what they wanted. Both of them put the items into their spatial rings. Feng Wu wasn't interested in letting them take it out to sea. The 3 ladies went to a good restaurant and wanted to have a big meal. The 3 of them asked for a private room and ordered a table of dishes. The speed of the dishes being served was very fast. After a few mouthfuls of the dishes, Annika suddenly felt the world spinning around her. There was something wrong with the food. Annika wanted to remind them, but it was too late. The two girls didn't even have time to say a word before they closed their eyes and fainted on the table. Chapter 560. The three ladies went to a good restaurant and wanted to have a big meal. The three of them asked for a private room and ordered a table of dishes. The speed of the dishes being served was very fast. After a few mouthfuls of the dishes, Annika suddenly felt the world spinning around her. There was something wrong with the food. Annika wanted to remind them, but it was too late. Silda fell with her. The two girls didn't even have time to say a word before they closed their eyes and fainted on the table. Someone outside seemed to have heard the commotion. There were footsteps and two tall men walked in. Why is she still awake? One of the men was shocked to see Fengwu still sitting there eating as if nothing had happened. Since you're fine, why aren't you running or asking for help? Why are you sitting there eating? This isn't the script. Fengwu girl calmly ate a mouthful of food. She didn't seem to be affected by the sudden appearance of the two men. After swallowing the food, she looked at the two men. There's someone here, Fengwu girl said seriously. This reaction isn't right, girl. What was he thinking? They weren't here to chat. They were here to do something bad. Boss, what do we do now? The man turned to look at the other tall man. He didn't know what to do. Idiot, do you need me to teach you? Just knock her out and take her away. The man who was called boss said impatiently. The other man nodded. He took out a large knife and was about to make a move. Put it away, put it away. If you break the things here, you'll have to pay for it. The boss said angrily. The man put away the knife with a silly smile. Of course, he couldn't pay for it. The tables and chairs here were expensive. He didn't want to pay for it. After putting away the knife, the man raised his sandbag-sized fist and was about to charge forward. Although the little loli was cute, he had taken someone's money and had to help them. He couldn't care less about her. The man wanted to knock Fengwu out and take her away, but the boss grabbed his fist and signaled for him to stop. The man stood aside obediently and looked at Fengwu without saying anything. Fengwu, what are they here for? Why did Silda and Annika fall asleep while eating? What a strange habit. Little girl, come with us obediently, and we won't make things difficult for your other two friends. If you don't want to, don't blame us for taking the three of you away. The boss smiled coldly, trying to persuade Fengwu to take the initiative to leave with them. Both of them were members of a mercenary group. Their mercenary group specialized in stealing and swindling. In short, the members of a mercenary group did not have a clean background. The reason why the two of them were here was because Fengwu had become the target of their mission. Although their mercenary group was not big, with only 10 people, every one of them had decent strength. The mission this time was just to catch a little girl. They didn't think it was a difficult mission, so only 2 people came from the entire mercenary group. These 2 people were a pair of brothers. They had been in the marketplace since they were young and had done a lot of bad things. Originally, they had found out about the girl's social status from the person who issued the mission, so they thought of an idea. They would pretend to be one of her close friends and write a letter to her, asking her to leave the city alone. Then, the 2 of them would lie in ambush outside the city. Unexpectedly, the girl didn't follow the plot and used the communication crystal to contact the real person, exposing the letter's scam. The 2 of them had no choice but to think of another way. They spent a lot of money to bribe the waiter and put a special drug in the food when it was served. Once the 3 girls fainted, they would be able to take them away from Central City without anyone noticing. Anyway, the employer didn't say that he wanted the girl's life. He just wanted to ruin her reputation. Although they hadn't done this before, it wasn't difficult. They just needed to bring the girls outside and find a place to do them. Then, they would attract some people to watch the scene and it would be done. It was such a simple thing. As long as it was done, they would earn 500 gold coins. They didn't need to kill or set fire to this job. They could even play with the girls openly. It couldn't be better. If it weren't for the 2 brothers' good mouths and good skills, they wouldn't have such a good job. The plan had been going well, and the other 2 girls had fainted just as they had expected. However, the most important target was completely fine. What was going on? When they came in, this girl was clearly eating. How could she not have fainted? The two of them couldn't figure it out. The boss felt that this girl was a bit strange. It was better to not make a move first. It would be best if they could outsmart her. Why should I go with you? Fengwu felt that the two of them were very strange. They walked in while others were eating and said strange things. Could it be that they were the lunatics that Irene usually talked about? The Fengwu girl's eyes widened. When it came to the word lunatics, Fengwu learned it from Irene. Irene said that Eve was a lunatic when she was arguing with Eve. Irene said that lunatics were the kind of people who had problems with their brains. They couldn't be reasoned with. The best way was to ignore them or use force to suppress them. There was definitely something wrong with these two people's brains. If that was the case, then they were really lunatics. Fengwu's eyes widened. The two men. Why did they feel that something was wrong? No reason. If you don't want anything to happen to your two classmates, come with us. The boss shook off the messy thoughts in his mind and threatened with a gloomy face. Why did he have a strange feeling about this girl? The information clearly said that she was just an ordinary girl. Illusion, it must be an illusion. What will happen to them? The Fengwu girl tilted her head. She was even more confused. As expected, Irene was right. It was impossible to communicate with lunatics. The Fengwu girl thought seriously. F*CK, this girl must be stalling for time. Knock her out and bring her away. The boss felt that this girl's question was a bit stupid. She must be deliberately waiting for people to come and save them. As a professional bad guy, how could he let this girl's evil plan succeed? The other man. So why didn't you just let him punch her? Why did you talk so much nonsense? In the end, you still had to fight. The man could only raise his fist and rush over again. He punched the back of Fengwu's head. Fortunately, this man was merciful and didn't kill. If this punch hit the head, even if she didn't die, she would have a concussion. Chapter 561. The man had no choice but to raise his fist and rush over, aiming at the back of Fengwu's head with a punch. Fortunately, this man was merciful and didn't kill. If this punch hit the head, even if she didn't die, she would have a concussion. The two men who attacked both thought that this time they would definitely be able to take down Fengwu. Who would have thought that Fengwu would actually use her small hand to catch the man's sandbag-sized fist? Moreover, the man's fist was tightly locked, unable to move. Let go. Stinky girl said let go. The man's face was red because of the force. The boss sent a flying kick over, wanting to kick Fengwu away. Who would have thought that Fengwu would also return a kick to him? This kick landed on the boss's chest. The boss was kicked back several steps until his back touched the door. Fengwu's attack succeeded, and the other man took the opportunity to raise his leg to attack Fengwu. Fengwu stepped back to avoid the attack, and at the same time, the man also escaped from Fengwu's grip. This stinky girl is not easy to deal with. The man said in a deep voice. Let's go together. The boss spat and rushed forward together with the man. The three of them began to fight in this small private room. 5 minutes later, the two men had exchanged more than 10 moves with Fengwu and were kicked to the wall to become murals. Knowing that they were no match for her, the two men had no choice but to retreat from the door. The two men had already set up a soundproof barrier outside the room when they entered, so no matter how fierce the fight inside was, the people outside couldn't hear it. This was the reason why after fighting for so long, no one came to watch the show. When the two men ran outside, they attracted the attention of many people. At this time, people noticed that something seemed to have happened in one of the private rooms. The person in charge specially sent a waiter to watch the show. When he figured out what had happened, he couldn't help but apologize. Their restaurant's dishes were drugged. If it wasn't for the fact that one of the girls didn't fall for it, the 3 girls would have had an accident in their restaurant. This was not a small matter. The person in charge waived the meal fee and gave them a VIP card to help them get over the shock. Only then did the matter pass. As for Silda and Anika, they were also woken up by the potion sent by the person in charge. The traitorous waiter was also caught by the person in charge. He would definitely not have a good ending. Even after they returned to the dormitory, Silda and Annika's faces were still dark. Both of them were still traumatized by the fact that they had almost been raped. The two girls started cursing as soon as they walked out of the shop. They didn't stop even after they went back to their dorm room. It was as if they wanted to curse the 8 generations of ancestors of the person who attacked them. Fengwu ignored them. She returned to her room and began to communicate with Ming Shi. Although Ming Shi had already returned to school, the two still maintained the habit of writing to each other every night. Every night, they would chat for a long time before they went to bed. When Ming Shi found out that Fengwu had almost been taken away in the afternoon, his expression turned ugly. Although he did not know who instigated this, it could only be those who had a grudge with Fengwu. The person that Ming Shi suspected the most was his cousin, Hua Jin. If it was really her, then he would settle old and new scores. In short, he would never allow Hua Jin to do whatever she wanted. At this moment, Hua Jin still did not know that her impression of Ming Shi had already hit rock bottom. She was still bent on toppling Fengwu and replacing her. At this moment, in another room of Notre Dame du Starlight, a beautiful man with tawny hair was elegantly drinking red wine from a wine glass. In front of him, a woman was drinking a pleasant song not far away. Another woman was pouring wine for him and occasionally feeding him a grape. Another woman was massaging his thigh with her fair, jade-like hands. At this moment, the man suddenly frowned. "You may leave." The man smiled elegantly and said lightly, "Yes." The 3 women bowed and left the man's room in an orderly manner. The 3 women went downstairs and greeted the man's 3 roommates with normal expressions. They put on their cloaks and left calmly, leaving the 3 men shaking their heads and sighing in the living room on the first floor. Why is he so popular with women? It's a miracle that he's dating 3 women at once and they haven't fought with each other. If you have a family background like his, you can do it too. Those women are just after money and power. The voice was full of disdain. "You're just jealous, aren't you?" Someone joked. "What's there to be jealous of? They're just women who are willing to do anything for money. I wouldn't want them even if they were given to me. Let's not talk about them. Let's talk about something else." The 3 men downstairs changed the topic and stopped talking about someone's girlfriend. At this moment, on the second floor, the brown-haired man's eyes revealed a faint displeasure. "You failed." The man's voice was very calm. There was no trace of anger at all. However, the person on the other side of the communication crystal knew that the man was angry. He shrunk his neck and his face was pale. "Yes, give us another chance. This time we'll succeed. I promise." The man on the other side repeatedly promised. "Yes, this is your last chance. If you still don't succeed, you know my rules. I never keep useless people under me." The brown-haired man said casually. The man on the other side wiped the cold sweat off his face until he hung up the communication. He was the leader of the Hound mercenary group. There were 10 people in their group. Every member was at the bottom of society. They had to do many bad things that went against their conscience in order to survive. He was no exception. Until 5 years ago, he was lucky enough to meet a man. This man gave him a sum of money and let him form this mercenary group. They specialized in taking on some shady business. There were 2 ways for mercenary groups to take on business. One was to directly go to the mercenary union to take on missions. Those missions were usually issued by certain families or individuals. The mission content was varied and there were all kinds of missions. As for the Hound mercenary group, they used the second method to accept missions. They had a special channel to accept missions that ordinary people wouldn't accept. These missions were all shady, and the people who issued these missions weren't good people, but they were generous. In the mercenary union, taking on a small mission was only a dozen or so gold coins. But at the place where they took on missions, a small mission was worth a few hundred gold coins. Not to mention the big missions, there were missions worth hundreds of thousands and even millions. As long as you gave up your conscience, it wasn't hard to make money in this place. Other than him, the leader and vice-leader, no one knew that there were people behind their mercenary group. They only thought that the Hound mercenary group was an ordinary team of 10 people. The others didn't know that the purpose of their mercenary group's existence was to serve a certain young master. This young master was like a demon. Chapter 562. Other than him, the leader and vice-leader, no one else knew that there was someone behind them. They thought that the Hound's mercenary group was just an ordinary team of 10 people. No one else knew that the purpose of their mercenary group's existence was to serve a certain young master. This young master was a demon-like existence. After ending the call, the tawny-haired youth looked up slightly with a thoughtful look in his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking about. Why did you fail? Didn't you say that you would definitely succeed? Hua Jin yelled in exasperation on the other end of the communication crystal. The tawny-haired man frowned slightly, a hint of displeasure appearing in his eyes. I'll help you deal with that woman. You don't have to be so anxious. If not for the fact that he needed the item she had obtained from the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom, he would have killed this detestable woman long ago. Unfortunately, now was not the time to kill her. He had not gotten the item yet, so he had to bear with it for a while longer. But you failed, didn't you? What kind of trash are your subordinates? They can't even defeat a second-year girl. Hua Jin yelled into the communication crystal in her room. Her disgust for Feng Wu had reached its peak. Ming Shi's sudden return to the school, and she actually heard the news from someone else. Although most people in the school did not know about Ming Shi's true identity, she still did not know about it. She didn't find it strange that Ming Shi didn't express any intimacy with her. However, in the eyes of those in the know, it was as if Ming Shi didn't care about her at all. She might not be able to become the future wife of a prince or even the Moon Empress. In the eyes of some people, she, Hua Jin, had turned from someone who could be roped into a joke. In their eyes, she had become a clown. If she could not get rid of Feng Wu and pull Ming Shi's heart back to her, she would become a joke when Ming Shi's identity was announced in the future. She did not want that. Her dream since young was to be like her aunt and become the noblest woman in Silver Moon, making all the other women kneel before her. No one should think of destroying her dream. Anyone who stands in her way must die. Unknowingly, Hua Jin had already gone further and further down the path of darkness, and there was no way to pull him back. When are you going to get me what I need? Miss Hua Jin, I've already sent people to help you with what you want, but I don't see you doing anything about what I want. The man sneered with a hint of murderous intent in his eyes. Hua Jin, who was originally cursing loudly, could not make a sound at this moment. Although Hua Jin was not strong, he could still clearly sense the warning and murderous intent in the other party's eyes. She believed that if she couldn't fulfill Gammon's request, she would definitely die silently in his hands. She had already realized how perverted this man was when she was working with him. If Gammon hadn't backed off at the last minute, she wouldn't have had to get involved with such a dangerous person. She took a deep breath and suppressed the restlessness and uneasiness in her heart. What are you worried about? Why would I lie to you? I'll definitely do what I promised you. Hua Jin hurriedly replied and hung up the call. After hanging up, Hua Jin could not help but exhale deeply. This man is too dangerous. Will I really not regret working with him? Hua Jin did not know what the answer would be. Regardless of whether she would regret this decision in the future, there was no way out for her now. If she could not fulfill her promise, he would definitely kill her. Definitely. For the next 3 days, Ming Shi was worried that something would happen to Feng Wu again, so he did not let her leave the school as she wished. The men from the Hounds had been waiting outside the school for 3 days, but Feng Wu still did not come out of the school. They had no choice but to wait here. He really didn't understand. It was such a simple mission to kidnap a girl. How did it end up like this? The men from the Hounds were gloomy, but since they had accepted the mission, they had to do it well. Otherwise, they would have to pay several times the commission. Those who could take on such shameful missions loved money as much as their lives. How could they be willing to give up the money they had taken? Hence, No matter how unwilling they were, they had to wait outside the school gates obediently. This was especially true for the two brothers who had been chased away by Fengwu. They were eager to catch Fengwu. Fengwu had caused them to be scolded like dogs by their leader. If they did not take revenge for this, how could they continue to live in the mercenary group? Fengwu was unaware that she had become the target of the entire mercenary group. 3 days passed unknowingly, and the date on the wedding invitation gradually arrived. To avoid unnecessary chaos, Mingxi helped Fengwu apply for a leave of absence and brought her to a private suite outside the school. This suite was Mingxi's private property in Central City. Usually, when he wanted some peace and quiet, he would stay here for a period of time. Very few people knew about this suite. Only those whom Mingxi trusted knew where it was, and Hua Jin obviously did not know. Duke Blue Moon's matter was a secret that couldn't be revealed. In order to not cause panic, the Star Hall didn't publicize this matter. Even the families whose families had been killed by Duke Blue Moon were warned. Because of this, nobody dared to talk about it outside. No one knew how the Duke of Blue Moon had taken her away. A person disappearing from the school without a reason was bound to cause a great deal of panic. However, the Duke of Blue Moon was too powerful for ordinary people to deal with. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Mingxi wisely decided to take her out of the school. However, Mingxi did not know that Fengwu was not the only one who had received the wedding invitation from the Duke of Blue Moon in Notre Dame du Starlight. Including Fengwu, there were a total of 3 people. With such a big thing happening, Mingxi could not hide it from the vice principal and the rest. Hence, Fengye was sent to the vice principal's house for foster care. The vice principal then reported this matter to the principal, who expressed that he could not solve this matter. This was not the first time he had experienced the Duke of Blue Moon's methods. He had powerful spatial magic and could instantly move people to any place he wanted. The principal and the rest had long suspected that the Duke of Blue Moon was a spatial magic god. Unfortunately, no one had seen the Duke of Blue Moon before, so naturally, no one could verify this conjecture. When the clock struck midnight, Fengwu, who had been sleeping on the bed just a moment ago, turned into specks of white light and disappeared. Mingxi had been sitting beside Fengwu's bed to accompany her. When he saw with his own eyes how Fengwu disappeared, his heart sank. He had already set up layers of barriers inside and outside the house. Chapter 563. Unfortunately, no one had ever seen the Duke of Blue Moon, so naturally, no one could verify this conjecture. When the clock struck midnight, Fengwu, who had been sleeping on the bed just a moment ago, turned into specks of white light and disappeared. Mingxi had been sitting beside Fengwu's bed to accompany her. He saw with his own eyes how Fengwu disappeared, and his heart trembled. He had already laid down layers of enchantments inside and outside the house. During this time, he had not been idle while recuperating at home. Instead, he had been using the cultivation method passed down from generation to constantly improve his strength. His strength had increased a lot compared to a few months ago, especially the power of enchantments. He was confident that even the nobles of the demon realm and the blood-kindred prince would not be able to easily break through the enchantments he had set up. He did not expect the Duke of Blue Moon to easily break through the enchantments he had set up and take Fengwu away. Mingxi clenched his fists, and even his fingernails unconsciously dug into his flesh. "Xiao Wu, I will find you. Wait for me." Mingxi's eyes were firm and distant. He raised his head to look at the bright moon hanging high in the sky. The bright moon hanging high in the sky emitted a soft radiance. It was like layers of light screens that spread out in all directions. Unfortunately, no one noticed the changes in the moonlight at this moment. Fengwu was woken up by bursts of crying. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was a black sky. There were no stars in the sky, only a big blue moon. This blue moon seemed to have some kind of demonic nature, causing people to feel a deep sense of fear from the bottom of their hearts. "Why am I here? Wasn't I sleeping at home? What's going on?" A woman's cries sounded. "Is there anyone here? Is there anyone here?" Someone began to shout in a panic, hoping that someone familiar would appear by her side. However, She was destined to be disappointed. Stop arguing. There must be a reason why we are here. Everyone, think about it. Did something strange happen before we came here? There was a girl who was relatively calm. She loudly interrupted the crying of the other two girls, and then calmly said, "Where is this place? Why am I here?" Another person woke up. The girl who had just woken up said in a daze, "What's going on? Who are you people? What do you want to do to me?" A voice with a hint of rudeness was heard. Obviously, it was a girl who was rather favored at home. Irene and Zicheng were also among the girls, but they didn't say anything. They just stood together. Irene was the first to notice Fengwu. She quickly walked over and helped Fengwu up from the grass. "You also received Duke Blue Moon's wedding invitation?" Irene asked in surprise. Irene didn't expect that Fengwu would receive an invitation from the Duke of Blue Moon. Fengwu didn't exist in the original novel. Fengwu didn't participate in the Duke of Blue Moon's dungeon. In the original novel, there was no such person by Zicheng's side. She had long suspected Fengwu's identity, but after probing many times, she found that Fengwu didn't have any knowledge of modern times. It wasn't until she came into contact with her more that she realized that she might have been wrong from the beginning. Feng temporarily didn't transmigrate from modern times like her, nor was she a reborn person. Instead, she was a transmigrator from ancient times. She had made this discovery after a long time of probing. When she first discovered it, she even felt that there was nothing left to live for. What was wrong with this world? It was one thing for the original female protagonist to be a transmigrator, but now she was the female protagonist. She and Fengwu had transmigrated, and Xiazhua had been reborn. If Xiazhua's rebirth was the result of the world's natural evolution, then Zicheng had to transmigrate as the female lead because this was a requirement of the plot. Then why did she and Fengwu come here? Why did she and Fengwu transmigrate to this world? She was sure that Fengwu hadn't even read the novel with Zicheng as the female lead. It could be said that she had nothing to do with this world. Irene couldn't figure out why Fengwu had transmigrated. She couldn't ask Fengwu this question because Fengwu had Ming Shi, the big boss, by her side. He was the future Moon King, so it was better not to think of him as her. Because of this idea, Irene had never exposed her identity as a transmigrator in front of Fengwu. Fengwu also didn't think so much. Now that she saw Fengwu in the territory of the Duke of Blue Moon, Irene was shocked. She didn't know if the Duke of Blue Moon and Blue Moon did it on purpose. If it wasn't for the fact that the Duke of Blue Moon couldn't marry a man, would he have brought the reborn Xiazhua in as well? Irene kept complaining in her mind. Fengwu stood up with Irene's help. After standing up, she realized that the clothes she was wearing didn't seem right. They weren't her clothes. She blinked and looked at the others in confusion. Then she realized that it wasn't just her. Everyone's clothes had been changed, and it was a wedding dress. The 10 girls were all wearing the same blue wedding dress with the same crown on their heads. Even the small leather shoes on their feet were the same. Everything was so strange. It was no wonder these girls were crying and making a fuss. Any normal person who suddenly went to a place they had never been to before and whose clothes and accessories were all changed would already be mentally strong enough to not faint. "Yes," Fengwu answered. "The Duke of Blue Moon's wedding invitation." The 10 girls were standing very close to each other. Erin didn't try to lower her voice when she spoke, so 2 of the girls who were closer to her overheard her. "Could it be that we're here because of the wedding invitation?" There was no lack of smart people among the 10 girls. After confirming that everyone had received the so-called Duke of Blue Moon's wedding invitation, all the girls guessed that they were brought here because of the wedding invitation. "What's going on? Why did I appear in this place after receiving a wedding invitation out of the blue? Why is this happening?" A delicate and weak girl cried pitifully. Unfortunately, there were only girls here. No one was in the mood to appreciate her beautiful crying. "Who brought us here? What's her purpose?" Another girl said uneasily while twisting her fingers. What other purpose could there be? To choose a bride to make a doll, Irene secretly complained in her heart. However, she could only think about it in her heart. She couldn't say it out loud because it wasn't something that a daughter of a small family like her could know. Moreover, it wasn't good to let them know too much at this time. What if they couldn't take it and directly committed suicide here? Daring to disrupt the Duke of Blue Moon's wedding game was a serious crime. They would die very miserably. Chapter 564. However, she could only think about it in her heart. She couldn't say it out loud because it wasn't something that a legitimate daughter of a small family like her could know. Moreover, it wouldn't be good to let them know too much at this time. What if they couldn't stand it and directly committed suicide here? Daring to disrupt the wife selection game of the Duke of Blue Moon was a serious crime. They would die very miserably. Irene was still very afraid of the mysterious Duke of Blue Moon in the original novel. No, it should be said that she was very afraid of him. Other than Irene, who had read the original novel, the other girls were scared and confused. Probably because they hadn't seen the means of the Duke of Blue Moon, no one felt despair. Ladies, welcome to the Blue Moon Castle. I am the manager of the Blue Moon Castle, Mo Yen. Here, I sincerely welcome you ladies on behalf of the Duke. At some point, a man in a black robe appeared not far away from the 10 girls. This man had black hair and looked to be in his 40s. He walked silently. No one knew how long he had been standing there. Among the 10 girls, including Fangwu, no one discovered his existence. Ah! Who are you? What is your purpose? You want money, right? I will give you a lot of money. Let me go home quickly. If you don't let me go, my father won't let you go. The girl who spoke obviously didn't have the consciousness of being in danger. When she spoke, she acted high and mighty, like a spoiled young lady. The man who called himself Mo Yen didn't even frown. Miss Simia really knows how to joke. Since you can come here, it means that you have the opportunity to become the Duke's bride. This is a supreme honor. Please don't say such rude words again. When he spoke of the Duke of Blue Moon, Mo Yan's eyes were full of reverence and admiration, as well as a trace of madness. When Irene saw him, the words, brainless fan, appeared in her mind. What supreme honor! Honor my ass! I'm about to be killed by all kinds of tricks. What honor! Irene cursed in her heart. She didn't have a good impression of this Mo Yen who had always stood beside the Duke of Blue Moon and madly worshipped his master. This was a crazy man. To some extent, his madness was comparable to the Duke of Blue Moon. The Duke's bride? What nonsense are you talking about? When did this young miss agree to become his bride? You kidnapped this young miss to force this young miss to commit a crime, right? Let me tell you, this is purely a dream. This young lady is the granddaughter of the Pharmacists Guild's vice president. Not just anyone can match up to me. If you know what's good for you, quickly let this young lady go. Otherwise, when grandfather brings people to find me, all of you won't have a good ending. It was obvious that Simia hadn't recognized the reality yet. She still thought that this was the outside world where no one dared to disrespect the Pharmacists Guild. In the outside world, Simia had been a little princess who was doted on by her family since she was young. But in Blue Moon Castle, she was nothing. Duke Blue Moon wouldn't give anyone face. A mere vice president of the continent's Pharmacist Guild wasn't enough for him. Irene saw everything clearly. Fengwu stood quietly at the side and watched Simia and the man called Mo Yen argue without saying a word. Zicheng also didn't say anything. If it was any other time, she wouldn't mind trying to curry favor with the granddaughter of the Pharmacists Guild's vice president. But ever since she came to this place, she had a very ominous premonition. She believed that her premonition wouldn't appear for no reason. Before she figured out the danger of this place and the owner of this place, she couldn't rashly confront the people here. Just based on the fact that the other party could bring her from the school to this place without alerting anyone, she had to admit that the other party's strength was more than twice as high as her current strength. The others weren't so calm. When they saw Simia reveal her identity and wanted the other party to let her go, 2 other girls did the same. These 2 girls also had good family backgrounds. With their status, they believed that anyone on the continent would be willing to give them some face. It was a pity that they didn't know that they encountered abnormal people. Moreover, these two abnormal people not only had abnormal brains, but also abnormal strength. With 3 birds taking the lead, the other girls didn't stand out to say anything. They began to calm down and size up the surrounding environment. They also guessed the strength of this Mo Yen and the possibility of escaping. Irene looked at those smart people with praise. It was a pity. If they weren't chosen, they would have a good life after marrying into any aristocratic family. Just this temperament alone is enough to pass the test. Unfortunately, no matter how good their temperament is, it's useless. This place can only be entered but not exited. Other than the female lead who has the cheat given by the world's consciousness, they who don't have any cheat must be prepared to be cannon fodder at any time. Fortunately, she wasn't without the strength to fight. This time, she also made a lot of preparations. She hoped that these preparations weren't in vain and could help her escape from this place. But what about Fengwu? She finally met a transmigrator like her. Although they weren't from the same hometown, they got along well. Could Fengwu escape? Irene was a little worried for Fengwu. But then she shook her head. What was there to worry about? Right now, she couldn't even protect herself. It was better to think more about herself. On this side, Irene finished letting her imagination run wild. Mo Yen also finished answering the questions. In short, the final result wasn't as the 3 girls imagined. They were respectfully sent away. Instead, the 10 of them had no choice but to follow Mo Yen into Blue Moon Castle. They weren't stupid. Naturally, they could see that although Mo Yan's attitude was good, there wasn't much respect in his eyes. He looked at them too calmly, so calmly that it was frightening. No matter how unpleasant Simia and the others' words were, he was as unmoved as a mountain. The other girls only felt that this person was very deep and his thoughts were unfathomable. Irene knew that this was because Mo Yen didn't have the heart to bicker with them. A person who was destined to live for a long time didn't even have the right to make him angry. Rather than saying that he was deep in thought, it was more accurate to say that he ignored them. In his eyes, all of them were inanimate objects. Mo Yen was an old monster who had lived for who knew how many years. How could he get angry with an inanimate object? Mo Yen led the 10 girls wearing beautiful blue wedding dresses through a grassland and into a magnificent castle. This castle was very big. The girls who appeared here either had some outstanding qualities or had some outstanding status. They were all young girls with extraordinary knowledge. Chapter 565. Mo Yen led the 10 girls in beautiful blue wedding gowns through a grassy field and into a magnificent castle. The castle was very big. The girls who appeared here either had something extraordinary about them or had an extraordinary identity. They were all girls with extraordinary knowledge. No one had seen such a big castle before. Not everyone was willing to go with Mo Yen, but after Mo Yen released a trace of his aura, no one dared to say anything to refuse. Just a trace of his aura was enough to almost crush them. How strong was this man who called himself a butler? As for the person who could be its master, how powerful was he? With uneasy hearts, the 10 girls entered the Blue Moon Castle one by one. The Blue Moon Castle was brightly lit. Such a big castle should have many servants, but after they entered, they found that there was no one in the castle. They didn't see a single servant. Although there were no servants, everything in the castle was taken care of very well. The surrounding tables, chairs, and all kinds of decorations were spotless. There wasn't even a speck of dust. Ladies, this is the Duke's mansion, the Blue Moon Castle. Currently, the Duke is unable to meet you. Among the 10 of you, only the ladies who pass all the tests and become the Duke's true bride will be able to meet my master, the most honorable and great Duke of Blue Moon. Speaking of his master, Mo Yan's eyes flashed with fanatical worship. Erin thought to herself, birds of a feather flock together. Perverts live around perverts, just as perverts do. What do you want to do? When are you willing to let us go home? Simia probably saw how powerful Mo Yen was, so she didn't dare to make a fuss. Even her voice became suppressed and aggrieved. Go home? This is the home of the future Duchess. Mo Yen smiled faintly, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Irene noticed that he only said the future Duchess and not all of them. The others didn't care so much. They only understood one thing, and that was that the other party didn't want to let them go. They couldn't leave this place, and it looked like they would be imprisoned for a long time. Among the 10 of them, except for Fengwu, Irene and Zicheng, who had their own trump cards, were not worried. The other 7 girls, on the other hand, were terrified. They only hoped that their families could find them quickly and save them from this terrible place. Ladies, you must be hungry. Please have a taste of the dishes we have prepared for you, Mo Yen said. As soon as Mo Yen finished speaking, silver plates floated in from the outside. This was a world of magic, so it wasn't a big deal to have plates floating around. Everyone was slightly surprised. They couldn't figure out what Mo Yen wanted to do, but they weren't afraid. These girls all thought that the plates had floated in using magic, but in Fengwu's eyes, that was not the case. In the eyes of the other girls, this was an ancient castle with no servants taking care of it. In Fengwu's eyes, there were many people in this ancient castle, and they were all young girls. These girls all had numb eyes and were minding their own business. They carried the plates in one by one and placed them in front of the long table in front of them. Then, they respectfully left. Just like when they came in, they did not disturb anyone. The identity of these girls could be easily guessed. They were all failed brides. Although their bodies were destroyed, their souls weren't completely destroyed. Some of them were lucky enough to keep their souls. These souls became the maids of the Blue Moon Castle, cleaning the castle day after day. As for the other girls who were unlucky, even their souls couldn't be preserved. They had already turned into ashes in this world. Fengwu was the only one who could see these girls. Even Irene didn't know that there were a large number of undead living in this castle. The original novel was written from Zicheng's point of view. Zicheng wasn't a necromancer, so how could she see these undead? Therefore, the existence of the undead had always been a secret. Even the hall master of the Star Hall and the dean of the Notre Dame du Starlight thought that all the girls had turned into ashes. Exquisite dishes were placed on the table. Mo Yen waited at the side, waiting for them to eat. The girls had been frightened all night and were already hungry. However, they didn't dare to eat the food Mo Yen served. Who knew if he had poisoned the food? Irene wasn't worried about poison. After reading the novel, she naturally knew that these things weren't poisonous. Zicheng also tested the things she bought in the mall and found that they weren't poisonous. She picked up the tableware and began to eat. Her natural and unrestrained attitude made Mo Yen look at her in a new light. Mo Yen couldn't remember which batch of brides had come here. He had seen many women over the years, but he had never seen someone like Zicheng who was so calm and generous in this unknown place. Perhaps this girl had a great chance to become the next century-old bride. The reason why they were called century-old brides was that the Blue Moon Duke's wife would change every 100 years. After 100 years, there would be another beautiful woman to fill the position. The previous century-old bride had been the Duchess for 100 years. And from this batch of girls, there would be the next century-old bride. Among these girls, he hoped that there would be a wife who could satisfy the Duke. He didn't want the Duke to get tired of them too early. Although their abilities were far greater than that of humans, this human world wasn't a place where they could frequent. The world's consciousness wouldn't allow them to do so. The people of Star Hall and Star Music Academy also didn't want to appear often. His Excellency had said that it was best not to go against the world's consciousness. This wasn't good for outsiders like them. And the people of Star Hall and Notre Dame du Starlight, as the world's top forces, the Duke didn't want to casually become enemies with them. It was best if they didn't have anything to do with each other. He knew that Star Hall and Notre Dame du Starlight had wanted to catch the Duke for a long time. Unfortunately, no matter what method they used, they couldn't come to the Blue Moon world created by His Excellency. In this world, without His Excellency's permission, no one could reach it. Because they couldn't find where His Excellency was, the top forces of the human world couldn't attack, and the Blue Moon world had been able to maintain peace. Although he didn't know how long this peace could be maintained, at least before the human experts found a way to enter the Blue Moon world, no one would be able to become the Duke's enemy. When the Duke got tired of playing the game of finding a bride, they might leave this world and go to another place. At that time, the matters here would no longer have anything to do with them. He hoped that the bride this time would be able to interest His Excellency a little. He had to let His Excellency play to his heart's content. Chapter 566. No one was talking at the table. The girl ate the delicacies on her plate mechanically. These were all good things that were hard to come by. Even people born in aristocratic families could not eat them every day. The food on the plate was absolutely delicious. However, out of the 10 girls, at least 9 of them were not in the mood to appreciate these delicacies. Only Feng Wu was satisfied with the feast on the plate. This meat was very delicious. It didn't have any fishy smell and had a fruity fragrance. Moreover, after eating it, one's body would feel warm. After one's battle qi automatically circulated in one's body, the strength in one's body had received a slight increase. The Feng Wu girl nodded her head in satisfaction. She was very appreciative of the delicious food. It was delicious, but it was so little. Why were the people here so stingy? They couldn't eat their fill. Feng Wu girl had some complaints. Ever since she went to Notre Dame du Starlight, Feng Wu girl rarely felt hungry. In contrast to Feng Wu girl didn't have enough to eat, but other girls didn't have enough to eat. No one would be able to eat or drink normally in such a strange environment. Even if there was coiling dragon meat in front of them, they wouldn't be able to eat it. You're not eating? Feng Wu saw that the girl opposite her had only eaten a few mouthfuls and there was still more than half of the food left, so she looked at her with bright eyes. The only thing missing from her small eyes was the word, "Please feed," written all over her face. I can't eat. The girl's expression froze. She muttered in her heart, "Who is this girl? We're already in a wolf's den, yet you can still eat and drink so much. Your appetite is too good. I'll help you eat it." The Feng Wu girl squinted her eyes, her small mouth glistening with oil. "Take it if you want." The girl pushed the untouched food in front of Feng Wu. The Feng Wu girl took it expressionlessly and then looked at the other girls who didn't touch their utensils. The other girls couldn't help but draw 3 black lines on their foreheads. Who is this foodie? You can still eat in this kind of environment? You're too awesome. Since they couldn't eat it anyway, the girls didn't wait for Feng Wu to speak and generously pushed the food to Feng Wu so that she could eat as much as she wanted. There were also 2 girls who muttered in a low voice. It was the words of an ignorant country bumpkin, but they did not dare to mock loudly at this time. In a dangerous situation, the usually unruly and willful young ladies did not have the mood to mock others. Feng Wu ate very quickly and finished everything in a few minutes. The corners of Irene and Zicheng's mouths twitched. His eating speed was amazing. After the meal, butler Missouri Yen brought them to another room. This room was very luxuriously decorated. The room was filled with sparkling crystal products. When the light shone on them, the whole room was so dazzling that they couldn't help but cover their eyes. The girls couldn't help but cover their eyes. What kind of room was this? It was too deceptive. Who would make a room so dazzling? Butler Missouri Yen seemed to be used to this and didn't care about this dazzling light. Ladies, please sit down. In this room, you will soon face the first round of the test. Among the 10 of you, only one can stay until the end. If you can't become the Duke's wife, you can only die. So ladies, do your best to survive. Only the last one can see His Highness the Duke and become the mistress of Blue Moon Castle. The girls looked at each other in dismay. They felt an unprecedented fear and seriousness in their hearts. Did he want them to kill each other? When everyone was still thinking about what Butler Missouri Yen wanted to do, they found that their environment had changed. They were not in the room just now, but appeared in a forest. Right above the forest, there was a blue moon. Feng Wu stood alone in a corner of the forest. No one knew when, but a white card appeared in her hand. There was only one sentence on the card. Kill one of the 10 people. Time limit: 2 hours. If not done within 2 hours, you will be erased. Not only Fengwu, but in every corner of the forest, the 10 girls all had the same card. If they didn't want to kill, they would die. If their skills were not good enough, they would also die. This Duke's Bride selection could be said to be full of blood. In the end, the winner would have a superior temperament and methods. But they didn't know that the last one would also die. Although they could leave a complete corpse, their souls would be sealed in their bodies forever. They couldn't speak or move. Those girls who were made into puppets probably regretted more than once why they stayed until the end. They might as well just die. Irene sighed. This Duke Blue Moon was really a big pervert. Squeezing the card in her hand, Irene's eyes flashed with determination. She had to live until the end. Fengwu looked at the card and casually threw it to the side. Then, she lifted her foot and walked into the forest. Some of the other girls made up their minds to destroy the card. Some directly hugged their heads and cried. After crying, a trace of ruthlessness flashed in their eyes. Girls who could survive in a big family would never be so weak as to wait for death. Until the last moment, who would give up the chance to live? No one wanted to question the authenticity of the information on the card. They all felt that if they couldn't do what it said, they would really die. Moreover, they would die very miserably. When the girls were about to kill each other, Ming-Shi didn't stay idle. He used the god's blood he left on Fengwu to find traces of Fengwu. As long as the moonlight shone, he would find Fengwu. The dean and vice dean knew that Fengwu was chosen by the Duke Blue Moon. Knowing was one thing, but they couldn't stop it from happening. The Duke Blue Moon's methods were very mysterious. Even the experienced and knowledgeable Star Hall Master and Notre Dame du Starlight's dean had no way to save her. At the same time, Irene and Zicheng went missing from the school. In order to not cause unnecessary panic, the school naturally concealed this matter. As for the other girls who received the Duke Blue Moon's wedding invitation, their identities were also calculated. These girls were all beautiful and talented. The disappearance of these girls was also concealed. If the existence of the Duke Blue Moon was revealed, it would only cause panic among the girls. Before there was a solution, it was better not to say anything. The families of the girls didn't know about the Duke Blue Moon. Most of them thought that their children were kidnapped and were frantically looking for them. No one would have thought that the girls had already left the Heavenly Wind continent and went to another world that existed in the cracks between planes, the Blue Moon world. Fengwu's friends hid this from the Feng family. Even if they told them about this matter, it would be useless. Although the Feng family was powerful, they were helpless against a colossus like the Duke Blue Moon. On the Heavenly Wind continent, those who knew about this matter were worried for Fengwu. Xia Zhuo was also worried for Irene. Before Irene was taken away, he actually told Xia Zhuo that he would be taken to the Blue Moon Castle. Chapter 567. Fengwu's friends kept it a secret from the Feng clan. Even if they told them about this, it would be useless. Although the Feng clan was powerful, they were helpless against a colossus like the Blue Moon Duke. On the Heavenly Wind continent, those who knew about this matter were worried for Fengwu. Xia Zhuo was also worried for Irene. Before Irene was taken away, he actually told Xia Zhuo that he would be brought to the Blue Moon Castle. Xia Zhuo wanted to use this opportunity to create some accidents and make Zicheng stay in the Blue Moon world forever, but Irene rejected his idea. Zicheng was the female lead. He had the great world's fate protecting him. It was still possible to make the female lead suffer a loss. However, things like killing the female lead couldn't be done. If he did, he might be obliterated by the world's consciousness. Because of Irene's obstruction and unwillingness to cooperate, Xia Zhuo's plan to use this opportunity to get rid of Zicheng naturally couldn't be carried out. Now that Irene had entered the Blue Moon world, Xia Zhuo was also worried about the safety of this comrade in arms. Now, the two of them were allies against the enemy, Zicheng. If something happened to Irene, there wouldn't be anyone to help him in the future. Eve also had suspicions about Zicheng's disappearance. Zicheng suddenly disappeared overnight. The The school's explanation was that Zicheng had gone to carry out a secret mission issued by the school and wouldn't be back for a while. Eve didn't believe it. Zicheng never mentioned any secret mission. Moreover, she and Zicheng had made an appointment to buy clothes together the next day. How could Zicheng suddenly disappear without a word? This wasn't something Zicheng would do. Although Eve suspected that the school teachers were lying, she didn't have any evidence to prove it. Moreover, an arm couldn't twist a leg. How could she fight against the entire school alone? Eve was extremely anxious, but there was nothing she could do. It was impossible for Fengwu and the other girls to know how anxious the people in the outside world were. At this moment, Fengwu held a pure sword in her hand and slit a girl's throat. After killing the girl, she found herself back in the room she was in earlier. Butler Missouri Yen was looking at her with a smile. Not far from her were 3 other girls, Zicheng and Irene. Just now, when someone suddenly attacked her, she felt a deep sense of malice. That poisonous gaze let Fengwu know that that person really wanted to kill her. Her master had said that being merciful to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. When that girl tried to kill her, Fengwu had never thought of being merciful. His master had said that if he were to show mercy to his enemies, it might not be long before he would bring about a troublesome enemy. This was because people who had failed once would learn from their experience and wouldn't let themselves fail in the same place again. They would become more and more difficult to deal with. Therefore, it was better to kill at the beginning. Fengwu was an obedient child. She always listened to her master's words. For example, last time when Eve wanted to kill her, if it weren't for Ming Shi and the others stopping her, Fengwu definitely wouldn't have let Eve live. This time, no one came out to stop her, so Fengwu easily killed the person who wanted to kill her. After Fengwu, another girl was teleported out. This girl wasn't as calm as Fengwu. Her hands and clothes were stained with blood. At first glance, it was obvious that she had been through a fierce battle. When she found herself back in the room, unharmed, she relaxed and burst into tears. Fortunately, she only cried a few times and stopped crying. She didn't forget where she was. This wasn't a place where she could cry as she pleased. Ladies, you all performed very well. Today's test is over. You can all go and rest. Later, the maids will bring you to your rooms. Mo Yen nodded with satisfaction and said. Hearing that they didn't have to continue fighting, all the girls breathed a sigh of relief. Although Irene and Zicheng were girls with good fighting strength, they didn't want to fight with others for no reason. These girls were innocent. Everyone just wanted to live on and be the last one to survive. If they could live well, who would want to die so easily? Soon, rows of maids dressed in white appeared. These girls seemed to have suddenly appeared at the same time. The maids brought them to their rooms. When they walked around the castle, many maids were working on the side. When they saw them, their expressions were very calm. There was no fluctuation in their eyes. They were like cold corpses. Besides working, they didn't have any thoughts. Seeing these lifeless girls like puppets, the 5 surviving girls, except for Fengwu, were inexplicably horrified. Why did so many maids suddenly appear? They clearly weren't here when they were eating. Fengwu. Obviously, they were here all along. It's just that you didn't see them just now. Back in her room, Fengwu fell asleep on the bed. The bed was very big and the room was very beautiful. However, it was cold and there was no trace of life. Even if Fengwu's nerves were thick, she knew that it was unwise to sleep in this kind of place. So she sat up on the bed and sat cross-legged to cultivate Do Qi. The laws of this world only allowed energy to exist in 2 forms. One was magic, and the other was Do Qi. The internal energy that she cultivated before had long become Do Qi that flowed in her body. After cultivating Do Qi for a while, Fengwu felt that the fatigue in her body had disappeared. Her spirit was also a lot better. She felt a little hungry, so she took out a lot of food from her space ring and stuffed it into her mouth. Fengwu looked at the blue wedding dress on her body. Although this dress was very gorgeous, it was inconvenient to wear. Fengwu wanted to take off the dress, but found that it was impossible to take it off. After frowning, she gave up. Irene cultivated for a while and began to plan what to do next. There would be another test tomorrow. At that time, one of the 5 of them would die. After that, one person would die every day until there was only one person left. Recalling the plot, she roughly knew what they were going to face tomorrow. If today's events in the forest were an appetizer, then tomorrow's events would be the main course. Tomorrow, 4 out of the 5 of them would survive. She had the information that she could survive. Zicheng should also be fine. Feng Wu's sword was very unusual. It wouldn't be difficult for her to survive. Thinking about it this way, the one who would die tomorrow should be one of the remaining 2. While Irene was thinking about who would die tomorrow, Zicheng was also communicating with the system. After evolution, her system had a certain communication ability. It was no longer like before where it couldn't speak. Chapter 568. Tomorrow, 4 out of the 5 of them would survive. She was confident that she could survive. Zicheng shouldn't have a problem either. Feng Wu's sword was very unusual, so it wouldn't be difficult for her to survive. Thinking about it this way, the one who would die tomorrow should be one of the remaining 2. While Irene was thinking about who would die tomorrow, Zicheng was also communicating with the system. After evolution, her system had a certain communication ability. It was no longer like before when it couldn't speak. After asking the system, Zicheng came to the conclusion that they were in an unknown small world. The owner of this small world was the Duke of Blue Moon. The only way she could leave was to use a large amount of points to exchange for an item. Knowing that there was a way to leave, Zicheng was greatly relieved. She didn't want to stay in this damned place and be the wife of the Duke of Blue Moon. She must leave this damned place. Zicheng's eyes were firm. The other 2 girls couldn't sleep either. They were frightened the whole night and didn't dare to sleep at all. They wanted to meditate, but they couldn't calm down. Their hearts were in a mess, and their chests were pressed by a stone. They were very sad. Early the next morning, the maids of the Blue Moon Castle appeared again and invited them to the front hall to enjoy breakfast. The 5 girls wore yesterday's wedding dress and walked step by step to the front hall with heavy footsteps. The table was already filled with delicious food. These were all rare delicacies, and the aroma they emitted was very appetizing. Steward Mo Yen quietly waited on the side, watching them finish breakfast. The breakfast was tasteless. Except for Feng Wu, the little foodie, the others didn't even know what the food tasted like. Everyone had their own thoughts and didn't have the mood to taste the food. After eating, Steward Mo Yen led them out of the castle and into a blue forest. Today's rules were that the 5 of them would enter the forest, and 4 of them would survive. They would only be teleported out of the forest when one of them died. Fortunately, they weren't asked to kill each other this time. In this forest, there were many strange beasts. These strange beasts were unique to the Blue Moon Forest. They were powerful and bloodthirsty, and their skin was thick. If one wasn't careful, they would be bitten to death. After Mo Yen explained the rules, he disappeared into the forest. At the same time, the forest was sealed by a barrier. Unless one person died, no one could leave. One after another, blue exotic beasts appeared around the 5 of them silently, surrounding them with ferocious looks in their eyes. Don't come over." A girl raised her wand and cried with red eyes. "What kind of monster is this?" The other girl was so scared that her hands and feet turned cold. Her heart was also flustered. These monsters gave her the feeling that they were too strong. They were definitely not something that a teenage girl like her could deal with. Irene also took out her staff and prepared for battle. Zicheng's eyes flashed with something, and his lips pursed. Feng Wu raised her sword, and her small face was expressionless. The sword spirit inside the pure sword, Xiaochun, was a little puzzled. What are these things? They feel so strange. They don't seem like creatures from the human world, the demon world, the god world, or even the underworld. What the hell is this? Of course, Xiaochun couldn't recognize these blue exotic beasts. They were all creatures created by the Duke of the Blue Moon Forest with his own power. They didn't have the ability to think, only the instinct to kill. They had no ability to resist their master, the Duke of the Blue Moon Forest. Although the Duke of the Blue Moon Forest didn't order them to attack, their instinct to kill still made them surround the intruding girls. Roar! Waves of earth-shattering roars came out. The girls raised their weapons and faced these exotic beasts. The exotic beasts were extremely ferocious. In just a moment, someone was already injured. The sweet smell of blood made these exotic beasts even crazier. Fengwu relied on her flirtatious movements and extraordinary swordsmanship to move among these exotic beasts. She wasn't injured. Irene had already received the inheritance of the wood magic god. She had many secret techniques to save her life. In addition, she got many good things before Zicheng. These were all her trump cards. Although it was a little difficult to deal with these exotic beasts, her life wasn't in danger. Zicheng was the female lead of the original novel. As the female lead, she must have great luck. Nothing could happen to her. Only the remaining two girls looked rather dangerous. Both of them were stained with blood. Perhaps it was because they had lost a lot of blood, but they looked very miserable. At this time, one of the girls suddenly rushed towards Fengwu and the other two. She probably saw that the three of them were relatively relaxed and wanted to get close to them. Seeing this, the other girl also moved over. Fengwu frowned and moved to the side. One must always be vigilant. After being plotted against a few times, Fengwu understood the deeper meaning behind her master's words. Irene also moved back slightly. Zicheng was still fighting on the spot and didn't deliberately move away. At this time, Zicheng obviously wouldn't save the two of them. She wasn't that stupid. Moreover, Zicheng was only a fake saint. The reason why she was a saint was to earn favorability points. She didn't really have any sympathy. The reason why she didn't move was because she had enough confidence. Even if someone wanted to plot against her, they wouldn't be able to do it. Since that was the case, there was no need for her to dodge. The two injured girls hid beside Zicheng. With the protection of the female lead, Zicheng, they felt a lot more relaxed. One of the girl's eyes flashed with cold killing intent and determination as she faced the enemy. Out of 5 people, only 4 would survive. She had to be the one to survive. The other girl obviously had the same idea. They both looked at Zicheng at the same time. This girl was very strong, and she had many high-level scrolls and potions on her. She would definitely be a strong competitor in the future. Instead of getting rid of this person who was about the same strength as them, they might as well get rid of a strong person together and increase their chances of survival. The two girls exchanged glances and made a decision. Moreover, at the same time, they used a powerful magic to kill Zicheng. Irene was killing monsters on the side while watching the two of them court death. You're even willing to kill the female lead. You're awesome. Let's see how you two court death. Reality proved that these two girls were indeed courting death. Zicheng wasn't someone who would easily leave her back to others. In this kind of situation where it was either you die or I live, of course she couldn't let her guard down against these two girls. The moment the two girls made their move, Zicheng's magic staff had already condensed a powerful magic and attacked the two girls. This attack carried a dense fire element aura. This was a very high-level fire element spell. Chapter 569. The truth proved that these two ladies were indeed courting death. Zicheng was not someone who would easily show his back to others. In this kind of situation where it was either you die or I live, it was impossible for him not to guard against these two ladies. The moment these two girls made their move, Zicheng's magic wand had already condensed a powerful magic attack towards the two girls. This attack carried a dense fire element aura. This was a very high-level fire element spell. As the female lead, Zicheng's magic spells were definitely much more advanced than these two girls. When the 3 magic attacks collided, the magic used by the two girls immediately collapsed. The two girls' faces changed greatly. One of the girls reacted very quickly and immediately used a scroll to protect herself. The other girl's reaction was not so fast. When Zicheng's magic approached her body, she only felt a kind of palpitation as if she had fallen into hell. After that, she did not know anything. Irene looked at the girl who had already turned into ashes. Wasn't this girl the granddaughter of the Pharmacist Guild's vice president? She was called something like Simia. So what if her family background was good? When facing the female lead, only death awaited her. With Simia's death, all the girls were teleported out. This challenge of 5 survivors and 4 survivors was over. As soon as the other girl who survived returned to Blue Moon Castle, she seemed to have lost all her strength and fell to the ground weakly. Her eyes drifted towards Zicheng from time to time. That look in her eyes was like looking at a demon. Zicheng did not care how this girl looked at him. In any case, in Zicheng's eyes, this girl was destined to be a dead person. She survived this time, but the next one to die would only be her. Among the 4 of them who survived, her fighting strength was the weakest. Her death was already foreseeable. For a person who was destined to die, Zicheng naturally did not bother to look at her. After returning to his room, Zicheng immediately used his points to exchange for a barrier-breaking bead. This bead could open the barrier of a small world for a short time. It was a much more advanced item than the barrier-breaking talisman. The points required were very shocking. If she hadn't sold a sacred artifact, she wouldn't have had so many points to buy this barrier-breaking bead. Before using the barrier-breaking bead, Zicheng cautiously asked the system to observe if there were any supervisors around. After making sure that no one was paying attention to her, she used the barrier-breaking bead to create a small space that only one person could pass through. The moment the spatial barrier was broken, Zicheng entered it without stopping. Irene, who had been paying attention to Zicheng's movements, used a special method to avoid being detected by the system. Less than a second after Zicheng entered the spatial rift, Irene appeared out of nowhere and immediately followed him in. As soon as Aaron stepped into the spatial rift, a beautiful yet cold man in a luxurious blue robe with blue hair that reached his waist appeared in front of the spatial rift. A hint of interest flashed through the man's eyes as he looked at the crack that hadn't closed in time. This was the first time someone had dared to escape from his territory. "But little mice, do you really think you can escape like this?" The man sneered. Then he waved his hand gently. A destructive force immediately hit the tunnel that was closing quickly. When the man waved his power, the spatial rift immediately shattered into pieces. Then, it turned into dust and dissipated in the air. The entire Blue Moon world became impregnable again. It was as if the tunnel had never appeared. "I'm sorry, Master. It's my fault." Mo Yen stood behind the man and said respectfully, "Forget it. It's just 2 little mice left and right. I've already broken the tunnel. There's a 90% chance that they'll die in the tunnel." The man was the master of this world, Duke Blue Moon. Mo Yen stood aside and didn't say anything. He had let the 2 bride candidates escape under his watch. This was his fault. "Keep an eye on the other 2. Don't let anything happen," Duke Blue Moon said coldly. Then, he disappeared. After Duke Blue Moon left, Mo Yan's face changed. This was the first time he hadn't done what the Duke had told him to do. It was all because of those women who didn't know what was good for them. It was a great honor to be the Duke's wife, but they dared to run away. If the other 2 dared to follow those 2, he would let them know what it meant to live a life worse than death. Mo Yen swore in his heart. At the same time, he sent maids to guard Fengwu and the other girl who were still alive. In Mo Yan's heart, since the Duke had personally made a move, Irene and Zicheng couldn't be alive. They must have died in the spatial rift. Those 2 women couldn't be alive. Unfortunately, it was too easy for them to die like this. They should suffer all kinds of torture before slowly dying. What Mo Yen didn't know was that the people he thought were dead were actually alive and well. The original female lead and the counterattack female lead weren't so easy to get a boxed meal. In a valley somewhere in Heavenly Wind Continent, a woman wearing a blue wedding dress fell from the sky and landed on a tree. The woman's beautiful blue wedding dress had been cut into tatters. Not only her dress, but her body was also covered with wounds of varying depths. Even her face had been slashed several times. Her body was covered in blood, which flowed down the trunk to the roots of the tree. As time passed, the woman was still unconscious. Her life force was quickly fading away. At this moment, a man riding a Pegasus passed through the forest. When the Pegasus passed by a tree, a drop of blood fell on the man's head. The man felt something was wrong. He looked up. Before he could see anything, another drop of blood fell on his face. When he saw the blue figure, the man frowned slightly. He leaped lightly onto the tree and carried the bleeding woman back to the back of the Pegasus. Irene. When he saw the woman's face, the man finally recognized her. It was actually someone he knew. Feng Juntian had some impression of this girl. She was his younger sister Feng Wu's classmate. She had even stayed with the Feng family for a few days. Irene's luck was pretty good. The place where she fell was the area where Feng Juntian was on a mission. That was how she was saved. If she hadn't met Feng Juntian, with her serious injuries and fainted in such a deserted forest, by the time she was found, grass would have grown on her grave. This was luck. As expected, transmigrated women weren't that easy to die. Irene was lying on a bed in a daze. A white-haired light magician was standing beside the bed. Under the magician's light magic, Irene's wounds were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chapter 570. This was luck. Sure enough, it wasn't easy for a transmigrator to die. Irene was lying on a bed in a daze. A white-haired light magician was standing beside the bed. Under the magician's light magic, the wounds on Irene's body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. When Irene woke up, she saw that she was in an unfamiliar room and her clothes had been changed. She knew that she had been saved. Irene breathed a sigh of relief. When the passage to the outside world was attacked, the entire space was extremely unstable. Before she could react, she had fallen out of the broken passage. She thought that she was dead. After all, she didn't even have the strength to enter the space at that time. If she hadn't been saved, she didn't know if she would have survived. No matter who the person who saved him was, he had to thank that person properly. At this moment, the Fengwu girl still didn't know that Irene and Zicheng had already escaped. She sat on the bed and meditated, using Do Qi to comb the veins in her body. She felt that the fatigue and tension of the day had finally disappeared without a trace. This place was lifeless and lifeless. Fengwu didn't like it. She wanted to leave, but unfortunately, she couldn't. Xiaochun said that he couldn't take her away. This made the Fengwu girl somewhat disappointed, but she didn't complain or cry. She calmly accepted this result and waited for Ming Shi to pick her up. Ming Shi said that no matter where she went, he would find her and bring her back. Fengwu believed that Ming Shi would definitely find her. The next morning, Fengwu and the other remaining girl were brought out for breakfast. Irene and Zicheng were obviously not at the table. The girl was very confused. Although she was afraid, she still asked. Mo Yen heard her and sneered. Those two women wanted to escape, but they were killed by His Highness the Duke. Fengwu frowned slightly. They were dead. The other girl heard this and clenched her fists. He killed them himself. Were they dead? Didn't Na Qi say that only she and this girl named Fengwu were left? The last remaining girl was called Mei Luo, and she was the granddaughter of an elder of the Heavenly Wind Continent's Adventurers Guild. This girl was also spoiled since she was young. Not only was Mei Luo beautiful, she was also very talented. She had the water spirit body, which was 1 in a million. Cultivating water magic was extremely fast. Although she was young, she was already ahead of most of her peers. Because of her water spirit body, her control over magic was extremely strong. Although the average attack power of water magic wasn't strong, the water magic in Beauty's hands was extremely destructive. Her control over water was extremely strong, far from what other water mages could compare to. If she wasn't so powerful, she wouldn't have been able to defeat the others and stay until the end. Mei Luo had a family background, she had strength, and she was also scheming. It could be said that she was a winner in life. If it wasn't for this incident, this girl could have become a famous expert in the continent in the future. It was a pity that she was unlucky. Not only was she chosen by the Duke of Blue Moon, she was also brought to the Blue Moon world, where she could die at any time. Among the people who were brought along with her, there were 3 people with abnormal strength. No matter if it was Fengwu, the transmigrated passerby A, or Irene, the transmigrated female supporting lead, they all had extremely strong strength. In the original world, Fengwu was a genius girl. She was born with a pure mind, and had an absolute advantage in cultivation. Adding on the fact that she was a godly weapon, the pure sword, her strength had long surpassed the category of ordinary girls. As for Irene, she had already obtained a godly inheritance and had stolen the female lead's many opportunities. She had many good things on her, and naturally, Mei Luo couldn't compare to her. Not to mention the original female lead, Zicheng. This girl was the female lead with the favorable impression system. She had even more treasures on her, and the female lead's cheat-like cultivation speed was also on top of that. Even Irene, the transmigrated female supporting lead, had to cultivate with all her might to not be left too far behind. Mei Luo couldn't win against any of the 3 of them. Even if she had already surpassed most of the geniuses in the continent, it was still impossible for her to win against the 3 of them who had cheats on them. Mei Luo also knew that against Fengwu and the other 2, she didn't have any chance of winning. When she heard the news of Irene and Zicheng's deaths, she was only shocked, but more than that, she was happy. With the death of the 2 strongest, wouldn't her chances of survival be much higher? Now, as long as she killed this Fengwu, she would be able to live. Although she was unwilling to marry a man she had never met, the most important thing was that she could live. As long as she could live, she believed that she would have a chance to go back and find her grandfather. At that time, she would take back all the humiliation she had suffered today. Mei Luo secretly swore in her heart. She didn't know that regardless of whether she could stay until the end, she was destined to die. Moreover, the person who stayed until the end would have a fate worse than those who had died before. Unfortunately, Mei Luo didn't know this at all. She was still planning on how to successfully kill Fengwu and become the last person alive. Mei Luo was very confident in her appearance. She believed that if the Duke of Blue Moon saw her, he would definitely fall in love with her. He was just a man, so she definitely had a way to make the Duke of Blue Moon, that mysterious expert, fall in love with her. This girl thought that the Duke of Blue Moon was one of the men who had been conquered by her charms. Because Mei Luo was born in a good family and had a water spirit body, she naturally had countless pursuers. Mei Luo was a girl who didn't lack scheming. In front of outsiders, she was always noble and elegant. She would never show her unruly and willful side in front of her admirers. Moreover, those girls who were jealous of her would also show their vicious side without leaving a trace, causing them to be loathed by the men. Mei Luo, who had been pursued by countless men since she was young, was confident that as long as the Duke of Blue Moon saw her, she would use some small tricks to make the Duke of Blue Moon fall in love with her. If Irene knew what she was thinking, she would definitely tell her that she was thinking too much. This was a big pervert, and she still wanted to conquer him. Quickly wash up and go to sleep. After eating, the 2 girls were brought out of the castle. This time, they didn't enter the forest or enter the illusion. They were only brought to the grassland where they first appeared. Mei Luo was very worried and very uneasy. In her heart, she planned more than 100 ways to kill Fengwu, but she was also afraid that something unexpected would happen. Mo Yen was too lazy to pay attention to Mei Luo's thoughts. He had seen too many women like her. However, the other girl, this girl called Fengwu, clearly didn't meet his master's criteria for a wife. Why did his master have to bring her to the Blue Moon world? Chapter 571. Mei Luo was very worried and uneasy. She had thought of 100 ways to kill Fengwu, but she was afraid that something unexpected would happen. Mo Yen was too lazy to care about Mei Luo's thoughts. He had seen too many women like her. As for the other girl, this girl called Fengwu clearly didn't meet his master's criteria to be his wife. Why did his master bring her here? He knew that this girl was young, but she had already given birth to a child. Why did his master look at this kind of woman who was no longer pure? He even squeezed out another girl that he had carefully selected. Mo Yen couldn't understand this question. Although he was the Duke of Blue Moon's trusted aide, he didn't know everything. Congratulations to the two ladies for staying until the last round. This is your last round of competition. The one who survives will be the mistress of Blue Moon Castle. As long as the two ladies kill their opponents, they will be the final winners. Now, please move. The last round of competition will begin. After Mo Yen announced with a faint smile, he retreated to the side and looked at the two girls standing on opposite sides. The two didn't immediately make a move. Fengwu didn't want to fight. She already had someone she wanted to marry in the future. She didn't want to be the Duke of Blue Moon's wife at all. Fengwu pursed her lips and didn't say those words. This man gave her a dangerous feeling. Relying on her sharp animal instincts, she felt that if she said those words, she would definitely die. Thus, she couldn't say it out loud. Fengwu's instincts weren't wrong. If Fengwu dared to say that she didn't want to fight, as a die-hard fan of the Duke of Blue Moon, it wouldn't take too long to kill her. Even if Fengwu was specially brought here by the Duke of Blue Moon, if she didn't follow the rules, she would still die. Fengwu and Mei Luo each stood on opposite sides. Mei Luo was thinking about how to kill Fengwu, while Fengwu was thinking about when Ming Shi would arrive. She didn't want to marry someone else. How about letting Mei Luo win? But that didn't seem to work either. If Beauty won, she would die. That person called Mo Yen had said that they had to kill each other to win. The Fengwu girl did not want to die. She still wanted to live and wait for Ming Shi to come and pick her up. If she wanted to live, it seemed that she had to win against the girl in front of her. But if she won, she would have to marry the Duke of Blue Moon. The Fengwu girl's expressionless face showed a rare trace of hesitation. The two girls stood there for a quarter of an hour. Clearly, neither of them had any intention of making the first move. Just as Mo Yen was about to remind the two of them to attack each other immediately, the moonlight in the sky seemed to become particularly dazzling. In the Blue Moon realm, there was no difference between day and night. There was only one blue moon in this place. No matter if it was day or night, this moon would always be there. The blue moonlight always carried a chill, making people unable to feel the slightest bit of warmth. Every day, the moon of the Blue Moon realm would emit the same light. There was no difference, no change. But now, the moonlight had changed. It was even more dazzling than before, bringing with it a dreamlike beauty. Moon King, why have you come to my Blue Moon realm? A dignified figure with a hint of evilness walked through the air and suddenly appeared above the three of them. At the same time, under the moonlight, a dreamlike figure appeared. It was a shockingly beautiful man. The man had long golden hair, ice-blue eyes, and a slight smile on his lips. It was like the warmth of the spring breeze and the gentleness of the moonlight. Prince Ming Shi. The Duke of Blue Moon was surprised to see who had come. He thought it would be Moon King. He did not expect it to be Ming Shi, the Crown Prince. Duke of Blue Moon. Ming Shi nodded in the direction of the Duke of Blue Moon. Prince Ming Shi, why have you come to my Blue Moon realm? The Duke of Blue Moon was quite polite to Ming Shi, the future Moon King. Moon King was not an easy person to deal with. The four emperors could affect the situation as a whole. He did not want to fight the top elites of this world. Ming Shi is here for his fiancée. Ming Shi's fiancée, Fengwu, has been invited by the Duke for a while. Ming Shi misses her very much. I wonder if Ming Shi can bring his fiancée back? Ming Shi said with a smile. Facing the Duke of Blue Moon, who was extremely powerful, Ming Shi did not show any fear. Fiancée? The people he brought were all investigated thoroughly. There was no way they had anything to do with the royal families of the four kingdoms, let alone the future Moon King's fiancée. Although he knew Ming Shi was lying, the Duke of Blue Moon did not expose him. He only looked at Mo Yen questioningly. Your Highness, Prince Ming Shi's fiancée is indeed here. It is my fault for not investigating clearly. Mo Yen consciously took the blame for this. Taking the blame for his master was the responsibility of a subordinate. Not to mention, Mo Yen was a die-hard fan of the Duke of Blue Moon. Taking the blame for his master was nothing to him. For a die-hard fan, taking the blame for his master was an honor. "Go and receive your punishment later," the Duke of Blue Moon said emotionlessly. He looked at Feng Wu and said, "Since you are Prince Ming Shi's fiancé, you can go back with Prince Ming Shi." If it was any of the other 3 emperors, he wouldn't care. Unfortunately, it was someone from the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom. As long as there was a moon, Moon King was an invincible existence. Although Ming Shi was not Moon King, he had inherited his bloodline. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to enter the Blue Moon world sealed by the Duke of Blue Moon's power. Ming Shi came to pick her up. Feng Wu's eyes lit up and she stared at Ming Shi eagerly, like a puppy who had found its owner after being wronged. Ming Shi looked calm, but he was relieved. He was betting whether the Duke of Blue Moon would give him face. If he let her go, then it would be fine. If he didn't, then a fierce battle would be unavoidable. In order to increase his chances of winning, he even brought the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom's inherited divine sword. All he did was to have the power to fight the Duke of Blue Moon. When the Duke of Blue Moon agreed to let her go, even Ming Shi couldn't believe that things would go so smoothly. With just a few words, the Duke of Blue Moon agreed to return Feng Wu to him. He thought that with the Duke's personality, there would be an earth-shattering battle. Ming Shi reached out towards Feng Wu. The moon seemed to have a life of its own and lifted Feng Wu, wanting to bring her to Ming Shi's side. At this time, Mei Luo, who had been ignored by everyone, rushed forward and hugged Feng Wu. "No. You can't leave like this. Take me with you. Don't leave me here alone." Mei Luo was jealous and resentful of Feng Wu. She was jealous that Feng Wu had such an outstanding fiancé. This was the future Moon King. If she married him, she would be the Moon Empress in the future. This future Moon King clearly cared about his fiancé. He risked his life to come to this dangerous place to save her. She also resented Feng Wu for being so selfish. She only wanted to escape and didn't care about her life. Chapter 572. She was jealous that Feng Wu had such an outstanding fiancé. This was the future Moon Emperor. If she married him, she would definitely become the Moon Empress. This future Moon Emperor was obviously very concerned about his fiancée. He actually risked his life to come to such a dangerous place to save her. She also resented Feng Wu for being so selfish. She only wanted to escape and didn't care about her life or death. Mei Luo held on to Feng Wu tightly. She didn't want to be taken away by the moonlight. She didn't want to be left alone in such a scary place. If they didn't take her away, then they would die together. Feng Wu frowned at her. She wasn't happy that Mei Luo was holding on to her. Ming Shi frowned. Taking Feng Wu away was already giving face to Duke Blue Moon. He couldn't ask to take anyone else away. Besides, he didn't have any relationship with this girl. There was no need to make Duke Blue Moon unhappy for a stranger. When the time came, none of them would be able to leave. What a naughty girl. Duke Blue Moon smiled. However, this smile didn't reach his eyes. Mo Yen immediately waved his hand. Mei Luo, who was holding onto Feng Wu tightly, flew away like a kite with a broken string. Without Mei Luo's pull, the gentle moonlight brought Feng Wu into the sky. She came to Ming Shi's side. Ming Shi held her hand and said goodbye. The two disappeared into the moonlight. No. Mei Luo screamed in despair as she watched the two disappear. Why didn't they take her away? Why didn't they take her away? Mei Luo's resentment almost drowned her. Layers of black fog appeared on her body. This black fog became thicker and thicker. Mei Luo was almost surrounded by it. This is... Mo Yen was surprised. He didn't think that this girl called Mei Luo would turn into a demon because of this. Her hatred was actually this deep. Every 100 years, the Duke would bring a group of girls. Although these girls all died in the end, not a single one of them turned into a devil. This Mei Luo was the first girl to turn into a devil in the Blue Moon realm. Interesting, very interesting. Mo Yen, let her go. Duke Blue Moon smiled at the demonized Mei Luo. Yes, Your Highness. Mo Yen gently waved his hand and a black hole immediately appeared below Mei Luo. Mei Luo's body fell into the black hole and disappeared from the Blue Moon world. Your Highness, why did you let the two of them go? Didn't you personally order me to bring Feng Wu back? This subordinate thought that Your Highness valued that girl called Feng Wu very much. After the final two candidates, Feng Wu and Mei Luo, left, Mo Yen asked the Blue Moon Duke carefully. That Feng Wu really interests me. She is just an ordinary person, but she can give birth to the reincarnation of the Elf King. It is impossible for an ordinary person to give birth to a god. But she did it. Not only did she successfully give birth to the Elf King, she also lived well. There was no problem with her body. Don't you think this is very interesting? Duke Blue Moon turned around and disappeared into the sky, returning to the study. Mo Yen followed closely behind, quietly following behind Duke Blue Moon. Back in the study, Mo Yen poured a cup of wine for Duke Blue Moon. Duke Blue Moon took the cup and sat in his seat, sipping the ice blue liquid in the cup. Duke Blue Moon calmly drank the wine. Although Mo Yen stood quietly on the side as usual, his heart was in a perilous situation. The woman who gave birth to the Elf King. And this woman was still alive. She didn't die from the Elf King's power. This was simply inconceivable. How could an ordinary person give birth to a creature like the Elf King? Even the goddesses of the god realm weren't qualified to be that person's mother. What was the Elf King thinking? Even if he wanted to be reborn, he shouldn't have chosen a human to be his mother. Mo Yen couldn't understand. What he didn't know was that the King of Elves he was talking about didn't make any choices at all. It was the original owner of this body who was unlucky and wanted to die. He ate the fruit of life that the King of Elves had turned into, which was why he died and allowed Feng Wu to take advantage of him. I didn't expect her to be the fiancée of that Emperor Ming Shi. This is unexpected. Now that she has been taken away by Ming Shi, it is a pity that we can't find out what is so special about her body and how she could give birth to the Elf King so smoothly. Duke Blue Moon had a look of pity as he drank the liquid in his cup. Mo Yen poured another cup of wine for Duke Blue Moon. It is indeed a pity. But why did Your Highness let the other girl go? Your Highness can keep that girl and play with her. Her body is a natural water spirit body. She must be very beautiful when she is turned into a doll. Keeping her is just another doll. What's the point? She has such a deep hatred for Ming Shi and Feng Wu. Now that she has turned into a demon, she will leave the Blue Moon boundary to find trouble with Feng Wu and Ming Shi. I have returned her to Ming Shi, but whether he can keep her or not is uncertain. Duke Blue Moon smiled meaningfully. Mo Yen, as the trusted aide of Duke Blue Moon, immediately understood his meaning. He was unhappy that Ming Shi came to the Blue Moon boundary and wanted to find trouble for them. That person called Mei Luo had turned from a human into a demonic human. Usually, as long as she didn't reveal her demonic chi, no one would know that she had turned into a demon. She could perfectly hide her identity. With such an enemy, that girl called Feng Wu and Prince Ming, she would be in danger. Feng Wu and Ming, she didn't know that Duke Blue Moon had given them such a big gift. At this moment, the two were in the Silver Moon Ancient Nation's imperial palace. Ming Shi hadn't inherited the throne yet. Moreover, he was still young, only around 20 years old. His strength hadn't reached the peak yet. He couldn't use the power of the moon as he wished like his father. If he wanted to find Feng Wu, he had to go back to the Silver Moon Ancient Nation and borrow the power of the two moons there to trigger the god blood. Then, he could use the connection between the god blood to find Feng Wu and bring her back. This time, it seemed easy for him to bring Feng Wu back. However, he had used up a lot of energy. The moment he returned to the Silver Moon Ancient Nation's imperial palace, he fainted on the ground. His face was pale. Ming Shi's fainting caused chaos in the Silver Moon Ancient Nation's imperial palace. Not long after, Ming Shi was sent back to his room. A white-bearded old man ran into Ming Shi's room at a speed that didn't match his age. He immediately treated Ming Shi. After that, the Moon Emperor and the Moon Empress also rushed into Ming Shi's room. The Moon Empress sat by the bed and cried. Although she was crying, she still looked stunning. She even cried so beautifully. It was no wonder that the Moon Emperor liked this Moon Empress so much and couldn't wait to marry her back to the palace. High Priestess, how is Ming Shi? Why did he suddenly faint? His breath is so weak. Did he suffer any serious injuries? Does he need any precious spirit medicine to treat him? The Moon Empress wiped her tears and looked at the white-bearded old man who was frowning and thinking about his condition. Chapter 573. She even cried so beautifully. It was no wonder that the Moon the Arch liked this Moon Empress so much back then and couldn't wait to marry her. High Priestess, how is Ming Shi? Why did he suddenly faint? His aura is so weak. Did he suffer any serious injuries? Does he need any precious spirit medicine to treat him? The Moon Empress wiped her tears and looked at the white-bearded old man who was frowning and thinking about his condition. She sobbed. Prince Ming Shi only overdrew his strength and suffered some damage to his foundation. There are no other problems. There is no need for any spirit medicine. Prince Ming Shi just needs to bathe in the imperial essence, and his body will slowly recover. There won't be any problems, the High Priestess said as she stroked her beard. What? Foundation damaged. This is called no problem? Isn't this problem serious enough? How did Ming Shi overdraw his strength to the point of damaging his foundation? How did this happen? My poor son. The Moon Empress gripped her handkerchief and cried even more pitifully. Those who didn't know would probably think that Ming Shi was already half dead. The High Priestess looked at the Moon Empress speechlessly as her mouth twitched weakly. To ordinary people, damaging one's foundation was indeed a big deal. However, was her son an ordinary person? He was the future Moon the Arch. He grew up bathed in moonlight and had the god's blood protecting his body. Although this injury sounded serious, it wasn't as serious as the injury on his arm. The High Priestess cursed silently in her heart but didn't dare to say it out loud. He was afraid that if he said it out loud, the Moon Empress would cry endlessly and complain that he didn't take her son's injury seriously. The Moon the Arch hugged the Moon Empress' shoulder and comforted her. Despite his busy schedule, he still took the time to prepare some nourishing medicine for Ming Shi. The Moon Empress was crying hard, but she didn't expect to see a beautiful black-haired young lady walking to her side. She pulled her son's hand and patted his head. The young lady looked at her son expressionlessly, but her worry for him could be seen in her eyes. You are. She was so worried about her son that she didn't even notice that there was an additional person in the room. She suddenly had a guess about this young lady's identity, but she didn't dare to confirm it. You must be Feng Wu. Ming Shi often talks about you. Moon King had seen Feng Wu a long time ago, but his wife was crying too much. He couldn't care less about anything else and could only comfort his wife first. Moon King sized up the girl that his son liked. He could tell that she was a pure and innocent person at a glance. So this was the type of girl that his son liked. No wonder he doesn't like Hua Jin. But then again, Diane seems to be an adorable and pure child. Why didn't Ming Shi fall for Diane and instead fall for this girl named Feng Wu? He felt that both of them were the same kind of people with clean minds. Why didn't his son take a fancy to the Dai family's youngest daughter who grew up with him? Moon Emperor couldn't understand. I'm Feng Wu. I'll be marrying Ming Shi in the future. Are you Ming Shi's parents? The Feng Wu girl blinked her eyes expressionlessly, fully displaying the characteristics of a stoic and adorable girl. What kind of introduction was this? Would anyone say something like this when meeting their boyfriend's parents for the first time? Moon King and Empress were a little confused. They felt that they didn't quite understand the thoughts of young people these days. Or was this girl an exception? I'm Ming Shi's parents. I didn't expect to meet you so soon. Moon King sighed. He had asked Ming Shi to bring his future wife back for them to meet, but Ming Shi always said that when the time was right, he would naturally bring her over. The husband and wife had tried many times, but they didn't get to meet their future daughter-in-law. They didn't expect to meet her now. "Hello, I heard that you have to prepare a gift when you visit someone for the first time. This fruit is for you." The Fengwu girl was a little conflicted as she took out the most delicious fruit from her interspatial ring. She took out 2 and gave them to Moon King and Empress. Sister Tian Yu had told her all this. After Sister Tian Yu found out that she was dating Ming Shi, she told her not to go empty-handed when she met Ming Shi's parents in the future. She had to prepare a gift to leave a good impression on them. That way, when she married Ming Shi in the future, they wouldn't object. Fengwu remembered it, but what if she didn't prepare a gift this time? Fengwu was a little uneasy. She had to take out her favorite fruit as a gift. She hoped that Ming Shi's parents would like her gift and agree to her marriage with Ming Shi. She didn't understand why she had to get permission from Ming Shi's parents to marry Ming Shi. Wasn't she going to marry Ming Shi? But Sister Tian Yu had to be right. So, she had to be obedient and take out a gift. Fengwu was a little nervous as she took out her gift. It was her favorite spirit fruit. It was a gift from the demonic beasts she met in the god's tomb. Ajur also said that these spirit fruits were very high level. They were treasures that people would fight over if they were outside. Anyway, Ajur said that these spirit fruits were very precious. He said that she couldn't give them to others or give them away casually. Now, she was giving Ming Shi's parents. She couldn't give them away casually. Fengwu girl thought seriously. Moon King and Empress were even more conflicted than the Fengwu girl. These 2 fruits seemed to be level 8 spirit fruits. There were many good things in the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom. They couldn't be surprised just because of 2 spirit fruits. They were just conflicted about why the Fengwu girl would suddenly give them 2 fruits. Was there anyone who gave things away like this? Although it was good stuff, why did they feel so stifled? "You don't like it?" Fengwu blinked her big eyes. There was obvious anticipation in her eyes. "No, we like it very much. We like it very much." "Yes, yes. We like it very much." Moon King and Moon Empress didn't want to disappoint Fengwu. They immediately nodded and explained how much they liked these 2 fruits. "Then why don't you eat it?" Fengwu asked curiously. "Eat? Did they have to eat the gifts on the spot? What kind of rule was this?" Moon King and Moon King widened their eyes in shock. "Eat, eat. We will eat it immediately." The husband and wife had no choice but to eat 1 fruit each. The high priest was just watching the show. It was rare to see Moon King and Moon Empress so helpless. If there was a plate of melon seeds, he would definitely bring a stool over to sit and watch. The husband and wife ate the fruits helplessly. They didn't have any bad feelings towards Fengwu. They just felt that this girl was so innocent that it was touching. Their son would have to worry about her in the future. Ming Shi, Big Aunt and Grandma are here to see you. My poor child, why are you injured so badly? What exactly is going on? Who could be so heartless to injure Ming Shi so badly? Before the people in the room could react, 2 women who were dressed exceptionally gorgeously rushed in. They threw themselves onto Ming Shi's bed and cried loudly. Those who didn't know would definitely think that Ming Shi had died. Chapter 574. Ming Shi, Big Aunt and Grandma are here to visit you. Why is my poor child so badly injured? What exactly is going on? Who is so heartless to injure Ming Shi to this extent? Before the people in the room could react, 2 gorgeously dressed women rushed in and threw themselves onto Ming Shi's bed, bawling their eyes out. Those who didn't know would definitely think that Ming Shi had died. Mother. Big sister. Why are you here? The Moon Empress was shocked by the sudden appearance of the 2. She regained her senses and spoke awkwardly. The Moon Empress had already given up on her sister and mother. She really couldn't satisfy their desires. Recently, she had been trying her best to avoid them. She didn't expect that she wouldn't be able to avoid them and would be pestered by them again. There was no need to mention how helpless the Moon Empress was. All these years, she had been taking care of her family. She even doted on her niece, Hua Jin, as if she was her own daughter. She didn't expect that her kindness to her family would raise their appetites. Perhaps she had been wrong from the start. Why can't we come? Something happened to my precious grandson. As his grandmother, how can I not come and take a look? The two of you are too outrageous. My grandson is still lying here, and you only care about eating fruits in front of my precious grandson's bed. The Moon Empress mother, old Madame Cui Ye, pointed at Moon King and Moon Empress in disbelief. Her expression was filled with indescribable disappointment, as though she was looking at two heartless parents who didn't care about their child's life. The corner of Moon King's mouth twitched. He didn't know what else to say to this old madam who had nothing to do every day and was desperately trying to make her presence known. That's right, little sister and brother-in-law. Although Ming Shi isn't your only son, he's the only son who will inherit the throne in the future. He's a precious child. You have to take good care of him. There can't be any mistakes. The Moon Empress' eldest sister, Madame Hua, also looked at the couple with disapproval. Moon King sneered in his heart. They really didn't treat him as an outsider. This Madame Hua was considered his elder sister, but as Moon King, he couldn't possibly call her elder sister. On the other hand, Madame Hua always forgot his identity as Moon Emperor. Every day, she would call him brother-in-law intimately. She rarely called him Moon Emperor respectfully. Don't think that he didn't know that Madame Hua relied on her identity as the Moon Emperor's sister to never bow to his wife. His wife wasn't someone who would hold grudges either. All these years, she had never held grudges against Madame Hua for her lack of manners. Unfortunately, this forbearance did not make the other party feel grateful. Instead, it fostered their ambitions. He wanted his daughter to become the next Moon Empress. Don't even think about it. Even if Ming Shi did not fall in love with anyone, there was no way he would allow Ming Shi to marry Hua Jin. Hua Jin would never be able to become the next Moon Empress of Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom. Who is this? Why has the person serving Ming Shi changed? This palace maid is too unruly. She didn't even bow when she saw me and mother coming in. How can such a person be qualified to serve by nephew Ming Shi's side? Look at her, one look and you can tell that she's not an honest person. Younger sister, you should get rid of her as soon as possible, lest she causes trouble for my dear nephew. Madame Hua glared at Feng Wu with a look of vigilance and disdain. She couldn't wait to get her younger sister, the Moon Empress, to chase this person out of the palace. She had clearly chased away Ming Shi's better-looking palace maid. Why was there another beautiful one? Her daughter had yet to win Ming Shi's heart, and the little vixen who seduced Ming Shi had yet to be dealt with. She couldn't cause any more trouble. Elder sister, what are you talking about? This is the girl Ming Shi likes. Her name is Feng Wu, and she's the legitimate daughter of the Feng family of the Eastern Ancient Kingdom. Moon Emperor and I have already agreed to their marriage. Once Xiao Wu finishes her studies at the Notre Dame du Starlight, we'll hold their wedding. The Moon Empress took a deep breath and felt that her elder sister was becoming more and more outrageous. Her sister and mother didn't have to bow to her, and she didn't mind. But who was Moon Emperor? He was the most respected person in the entire Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom. Her mother and sister actually used her identity as the Moon Empress to openly act like elders. One had to know that even Moon Emperor's own uncles had to bow to him when they met. Moreover, they were just in-laws. How could her mother and elder sister not give Moon Emperor face? The Moon Empress had a headache. She couldn't understand how her family became like this. Perhaps they were like this in the past, but she just didn't notice it at that time. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but look at her husband apologetically. It was all her fault for not raising her family's ambition. The Moon Empress felt very guilty. She looked at Moon Emperor with a very apologetic gaze. Moon Emperor gave her a look that said it was fine. Moon Emperor naturally didn't care about women like old Madame Cui Ye and Madame Hua. Therefore, he tolerated their rudeness. Previously, He even reprimanded them because he didn't want his wife to be embarrassed. No matter what, they were his wife's family. If his wife's family was reprimanded by him, it wouldn't be long before rumors of them not being on good terms spread in the palace. Moon Emperor didn't want the Moon Empress' reputation to be tarnished. Therefore, he tolerated this pair of mother and daughter. But now, Moon Emperor realized that he might have done something wrong. He should have communicated with his wife properly instead of tolerating it. Although these were all small matters, if he didn't give in time and time again, the Hua family wouldn't have dared to interfere with Moon Emperor's marriage. Fortunately, although Moon Emperor didn't care about small matters, he never gave in when it came to big matters. He didn't let the Hua family take advantage of him. She is that Fengwu. I have heard a lot about her. Younger sister, don't be fooled by her. She already gave birth to a child at such a young age. That child's father is unknown. It can be seen that this young lady has already had relationships with many men at such a young age. If her private life is so complicated, how can she become the future Moon Empress? I will never agree to let such a shameless woman marry Ming Shi. Madame Hua said sternly. Moon Emperor and Moon Empress exchanged glances. When did they say that they needed her to agree to Ming Shi's marriage? Your sister is right. We can't agree to this marriage. As Ming Shi's grandmother, I can't let my grandson marry such a disreputable woman. If he really marries her, our Silver Moon ancient kingdom will be laughed at by other countries. Madame Cui Ye said righteously to the Moon Empress. Madame Cui Ye also knew that the reason she could have her current status was all because of her daughter. She dared to be presumptuous in front of her daughter, but she didn't dare to go against Moon Emperor. You are Fengwu, right? If you really want what's best for Ming Shi, you should leave him. How can a woman like you, whose reputation has already been tarnished, be the concubine of our Silver Moon ancient kingdom? For your own good and for Ming Shi's sake, you should leave on your own. Chapter 575. Madame Cui Ye spoke righteously to the Moon Empress. Madame Cui Ye also knew that the reason why she could have her current status was all because of her daughter. She dared to be impudent in front of her daughter, but she didn't dare to go against the Moon Emperor. You're Fengwu, right? If you really want what's best for Ming Shi, you should leave him. How can a woman like you, whose reputation has been tarnished, be the consort of our Silver Moon ancient kingdom's prince? For your own good and for Ming Shi's sake, you should leave on your own. Madame Hua thought that Fengwu was still young. As long as she coaxed her a little, this woman might leave Ming Shi on her own accord. It would also save them a lot of effort. Fengwu blinked her eyes and watched Madame Hua's performance expressionlessly. She didn't say a word, and no one knew what she was thinking. The Moon Empress was afraid that Fengwu would really be persuaded by her elder sister. If Fengwu really took things too hard and left her son would go crazy. Xiao Wu, don't listen to my elder sister's nonsense. You're the girl that Ming Shi likes. No one can deny your identity. According to our Silver Moon ancient kingdom's rules, the future Moon Emperor has the right to choose his wife. No one can interfere, not even his parents. So don't worry, as long as you're in Ming Shi's heart, you're Ming Shi's future wife. No one can shake your position. The Moon Empress hurriedly went forward to hold Fengwu's small hand and kept assuring her. She was afraid that her unreliable elder sister would persuade such a good daughter-in-law to leave her. Little sister, what nonsense are you talking about? How can you let Ming Shi marry such a filthy woman? I will never agree to it. If Ming Shi wants to marry, it should be Hua Jin. The two of them grew up together, and Hua Jin loves Ming Shi so much. The two of them will be very happy together and will receive everyone's blessings. Letting them get married is the best choice. Only you think so? The high priest, who had been ignored all this while, rolled his eyes. He was utterly speechless at these two women. In recent years, the Hua family had become worse and worse. They relied on their blood relationship with the Moon Empress to put on airs all day long, thinking that they were second only to one and above everyone. They even dreamed of making Hua Jin the next Moon Empress. With Hua Jin's character, the high priest didn't believe that Prince Mingshi would take a liking to her. As it turned out, the old man was right. Prince Mingshi already had a lady he liked, and this lady was obviously much better than Hua Jin, that two-faced woman. Sister, stop spouting nonsense. Mingshi doesn't love Hua Jin. It's impossible for the two of them to be together. This was the first time the Moon Empress had spoken in such a stern tone in front of her kin. Liuli, how can you say that? That's your biological sister. How can you speak to your sister like that? Old Madame Cui Ye was so angry that she called out the Moon Empress's name before she got married. The Moon Empress's name was Shang Liuli. She was the daughter of Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom's Shang family. Ever since Shang Liuli got married, everyone had to call her Moon Empress. No one dared to call her Shang Liuli anymore. No, there was one more person who could call her Moon Emperor. Mother, must you make things difficult for me? The Moon Empress couldn't hide her sadness. She understood that it wasn't easy for her mother to raise her and her sister, so she was tolerant of them. She didn't expect that her tolerance would make them take everything for granted. They even dared to meddle in Mingshi's marriage. Indeed, she was wrong. The Moon Empress's eyes were filled with pain, but old Madame Cui Ye turned a blind eye to her daughter's sadness. How did I make things difficult for you? How dare you speak to me like that? Do you still treat me as your mother? Have you forgotten who raised you? If it wasn't for me putting in so much effort to raise you, how could you have your current status? You can't be ungrateful. Old Madame Cui Ye was still the same. As long as her daughter expressed a little dissatisfaction, she would immediately bring up the old scores. She only stopped when the Moon Empress was speechless and had to lower her head to admit her mistake. The Moon Empress shut her mouth and didn't say anything else. She knew that once her mother started bringing up the old scores, this matter would never end unless she apologized. However, she didn't want to apologize today. She didn't do anything wrong. She didn't want to be like before, admitting her mistake to her mother regardless of whether it was her fault or not. Moon Emperor and the High Priestess stood together and didn't say anything to help. Only when the Moon Empress was pushed further away by old Madame Cui Ye would he be able to take care of this mother and daughter who were jumping up and down every day. Before that, he could only let his wife suffer a little. This was also to make her stronger and make a decision. Are you the kind of extreme relatives that Ajur mentioned? Just as old Madame Cui Ye wanted to take advantage of the situation and force her daughter to apologize, the Fengwu girl, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke. The Fengwu girl looked very serious when she spoke, and her pair of big eyes were flashing with a moving luster. Just one sentence from her almost choked old Madame Cui Ye and her daughter to death. You uneducated wild girl, what nonsense are you talking about? Old Madame Cui Ye was so angry that the wrinkles on her face were trembling. She stretched out her trembling hand, and her index finger, which was wearing a gemstone ring, almost poked Fengwu's forehead. The Moon Empress quickly pulled Fengwu away, afraid that old Madame Cui Ye would hurt Fengwu. At the same time, she also expressed her admiration for Fengwu in her heart. Ever since she was young, the Moon Empress was afraid of her mother, old Madame Cui Ye. She had never dared to say anything harsh in front of her mother. Her mother was also a strange woman who would often vomit blood from anger, but she couldn't do anything to her. She didn't expect that it would be her mother's turn to vomit blood from anger this time. Although it was a little unfilial to think this way, for words appeared in the Moon Emperor's heart, happy to hear and see. Moon Emperor, happy to hear and see X1. High Priestess, happy to hear and see X2. Therefore, at this moment, the three people's minds were actually in sync. From this point, it could be seen how unlikable this old Madame Cui Ye was. Ajur said that every family will have a few extreme relatives. You are the extreme relatives that Ajur mentioned, right? The Fengwu girl had always been curious about what extreme relatives were. Ajur said that most families had extreme relatives, but why hadn't she seen any before? Ajur said that she would naturally know when she saw them. When the mother and daughter rushed in, the Fengwu girl's mind automatically flashed with 4 words. Extreme relatives. The Fengwu girl was very curious about these extreme relatives. Ajur said that she should never give these extreme relatives a chance to pester her. Once she was pestered, she would definitely not be able to get rid of them in the future. Once she met such people, she should stay as far away as possible. The Fengwu girl was very curious about these extreme relatives. Today, she finally saw two extreme relatives. The Fengwu girl was very happy. Chapter 576. The Fengwu girl was very curious about such creatures. Ajur had told her to never give them a chance to pester her. Once she was pestered, she would never be able to shake them off in the future. It was best to stay far away from such people. The Fengwu girl was very curious about such creatures. Today, she finally saw two creatures that she suspected to be her relatives. The Fengwu girl was very happy. You guys are indeed like that. So this is how the relatives look like. The Fengwu girl nodded seriously. Rude girl. Liuli, are you just going to watch this girl be so rude to your mother? Madame Cui Ye wanted to give Fengwu two tight slaps. However, the person standing in front of her wasn't just her daughter, the current Moon Empress. There was also an existence that even she didn't dare to provoke, her son-in-law, the Moon the Arch. In front of the Moon the Arch, she could be a little rude, but she didn't dare to be too impudent. It was because Madame Cui Ye didn't go overboard that the Moon the Arch could tolerate this old woman until now on account of his wife. The Moon Empress laughed awkwardly and said, "Mother, Xiao Wu is still young. Don't lower yourself to her level." It was rare to see someone angering her mother to this extent. Although the Moon Empress couldn't be happy openly, she couldn't stand on Fengwu's side and go against her mother. However, she could still feel happy in her heart. This girl is so rude. Why don't you get someone to chase her out? Look at her. She hasn't even entered the family and dares to treat me and your sister like this. I am Ming Shi's grandmother. She is just a wild girl, and she dares to be so rude to me. She is simply relying on your indulgence to be lawless. Madame Cui Ye roared at the Moon Empress, her entire face distorted from anger. No, the one relying on our indulgence to be lawless is clearly you. The Moon the Arch and the Moon Empress thought at the same time. High Priestess, he. It's rare for Xiao Wu to be a guest. Mother, don't be so calculative with a child like her. The Moon Empress didn't mention anything about chasing her away. Girl, you think you are so great now that you are the Moon Empress. You are looking down on this old woman even more. Fine, if you won't teach her a lesson, I'll do it myself. Madame Cui Ye was so angry that she lost all reason. Grabbing with one hand, she pulled out an extraordinary sword from her space ring and swung it at Fengwu's forehead. She wanted to kill. Umph. Moon Emperor snorted. Madame Tsueya felt an invisible pressure pressing down on her from all directions. With a clang, the sword in Madame Tsueya's hand fell to the ground. She almost collapsed to the ground, her face pale and devoid of blood. She looked extremely weak. When the sword fell to the ground, the pressure on Madame Cui Ye's body finally disappeared. Her forehead was covered in cold sweat. Her mind, which had been muddled by anger, cleared up. She actually drew her sword in front of Moon Emperor. How could she do such a disrespectful thing? Madame Cui Ye was flustered. She knew that the Moon Emperor was not a fatuous ruler who would abandon his principles for the sake of a woman. If he were, he would have long controlled the entire Silver Moon ancient kingdom through his daughter. Why would he need to groom Hua Jin to become the next Moon Empress to gain more benefits for the Hua and Shang families? Mother! The Moon Empress' eldest sister, Madame Hua, was so frightened that she hurried forward to support her, not letting her fall to the ground. How dare you draw your weapon in front of His Highness Moon Emperor? Madame Cui Ye has committed a crime of disrespect. The High Priest had long wanted to teach Cui Ye a lesson. How could he let go of such a rare opportunity? He immediately jumped out and declared Madame Cui Ye's crime selflessly. Madame Hua was so frightened that her legs turned to jelly. Although Madame Hua and Madame Cui Ye were ambitious and ruthless, their intelligence was just above average. The two women were not outstanding people. Now that they were frightened by the high priest, be it Madame Hua or Madame Cui Ye, they were quite frightened. Madame Hua knelt on the ground nervously. "Your Highness, please forgive us. Mother was just muddle-headed from anger. She didn't do it on purpose." With that, Madame Hua hurriedly gave the Moon Empress a look, hoping that the latter could speak up for her. The Moon Empress helplessly turned her head and pretended that she didn't see it. Her mother and sister were getting more and more outrageous recently. It would be good to teach them a lesson and let them settle down. It was better for her not to care. Seeing that the Moon Empress ignored them, Madame Hua became even more anxious. She secretly scolded the Moon Empress for being an ingrate and a black-hearted person. However, she didn't dare to show her dissatisfaction on her face. "Forget it. On account of the Moon Empress, we will not pursue this matter. Madame Cui Ye seems to be feeling a little unwell. Madame Hua should help Madame Cui Ye back to rest. Don't enter the palace if you have nothing to do. Let Madame Cui Ye recuperate." The Moon Empress waved her hand and said magnanimously. Madame Cui Ye was unhappy but didn't dare to say anything. She could only let her eldest daughter, who had just thanked her profusely, help her out of Ming Shi's room. After Madame Cui Ye and her daughter left the palace, they got into their own carriage and rushed to the Shang family's residence without stopping. In the carriage, Madame Hua used a handkerchief to wipe Madame Cui Ye's sweat. However, she kept cursing her own sister. Liu Li, that ingrate. She didn't think that if mother didn't raise her personally, she wouldn't be where she is today. She actually didn't say anything for mother today. It's simply too disappointing. Madame Hua had been dissatisfied with her sister for a long time. Why could her sister become the Moon Empress while she could only be the mistress of the Hua family's head? Why did she have to bow and scrape when she saw her sister? Why did all the good things belong to her, Shang Liuli? Madame Hua was unhappy but couldn't do anything to her sister. She could only secretly curse in her heart. After hearing Madame Hua's words, Madame Cui Ye also felt uncomfortable. "Eldest sister, do you think your sister has changed? She never talked back to me in the past. But today, not only did she talk back to me, she even watched the Moon Emperor humiliate me." When Madame Cui Ye thought of her younger daughter's heartlessness, it wasn't that she didn't hate her. If this had happened before Shang Liuli got married, Madame Cui Ye would have broken her legs. However, now that her daughter was married, it was impossible for her to do anything to her daughter even if she wanted to. Now that her younger daughter was the empress of a country, how could she punish her as she pleased? She's already the Moon Empress. How can she not change? Ever since she became the Moon Empress, she no longer listens to us like before. She's not even willing to help with Xiao Jin and Ming Shi's marriage. I think she despises us and doesn't want to bother with us anymore. Madame Hua had long held a grudge against the Moon Empress. Now that her younger sister had become the Moon Empress and was climbing over her head, she accepted it. She wanted her daughter to marry Ming Shi. This was beneficial to them, was it not? With the support of the Shang and Hua families, wouldn't it be easier for Ming Shi to ascend to that position in the future? Why didn't she accept her suggestion? After thinking about it, it was because she didn't want Hua Jin to become the next Moon Empress. She didn't want her sister to become her son's mother-in-law one day. Chapter 577. Madame Hua had long held a grudge against the Moon Empress. Now that her younger sister had become the Moon Empress, she had no choice but to accept it. She wanted her daughter to marry Ming Shi. This would benefit both of them, right? With the support of the Shang and Hua families, wouldn't it be easier for Ming Shi to ascend to that position in the future? Why didn't Shang Liuli accept her suggestion? After thinking about it, it was because she didn't want Hua Jin to become the next Moon Empress. She didn't want her elder sister to become her son's mother-in-law one day. The more she thought about it, the more uncomfortable the current Moon Empress felt toward her younger sister. Your younger sister shouldn't be such a person. Madame Tsueya knew her two daughters' personalities very well. Her eldest daughter was competitive, courageous, and ambitious. Her personality was just like her, so she favored her eldest daughter more. On the other hand, her younger daughter had a soft personality, didn't like to fight, and was overly gentle. She was just like her dead father. When her husband was alive, she didn't like his personality, so she didn't like this daughter who resembled her husband. Although she didn't like her, she was still someone who had crawled out of her womb. How could she not dote on her? It was just that she didn't dote on her elder daughter as much. You can't judge a book by its cover. Now that my younger sister has become the Moon Empress, her personality won't be the same as before. Madame Hua snorted in disdain. All right, let's not talk about it anymore. Remind Hua Jin to act quickly. This Feng Wu has to be eliminated. As long as she's around, our Xiao Jin won't be able to become the Moon Empress. Madame Tsueya didn't want to talk about this anymore, so she changed the topic to her granddaughter. I understand. I'll definitely talk to Xiao Jin. Madame Hua nodded as she massaged Madame Tsueya's shoulders. After Madame Tsueya and Madame Hua left, the Moon Empress patted her chest with lingering fear. She had been afraid of her mother since she was young. This was the first time she went against her mother like this. It would be strange if she wasn't afraid. She had just suppressed the fear in her heart and didn't show it. You scared me to death, the Moon Empress said, still in shock. Don't be afraid. I'll protect you, Feng Wu said seriously as she looked at the Moon Empress. Moon Thiaka's mouth twitched. Did this kid say something wrong? That was his line, right? With his best relative gone, Ming Shi finally had a stable environment to recuperate. Ming Shi's body wasn't injured, but he had expended too much energy. In order to find Feng Wu, Ming Shi had used a secret technique that he couldn't use with his current strength. This had caused the energy in his body to be exhausted and his consciousness to fall into a state of deep sleep. The high priest had already said that if he wanted Ming Shi to get better, he just needed to bathe him in the Diluyu syrup. Speaking of imperial syrup, this was a good item. Every 3 months, a golden energy would descend from the sky of the Silver Moon Kingdom. This was the essence of the moon. If an ordinary person consumed it, it could heal their body's hidden ailments, improve their potential and physical fitness, and also have a very good nourishing effect on damaged spiritual power. If a plant was bathed in the Diluyu syrup, it could even gain intelligence and obtain a special cultivation method for plants. From then on, they would be able to get rid of their plant body and turn into a human form, becoming a plant spirit. That was why the Diluyu syrup was a good item. Although it would descend once every 3 months, there were too many monks and too little porridge. There were very few people who were lucky enough to get the Diluyu syrup. But this wasn't a problem for Moon the Arch. As long as Moon the Arch was willing, he could absorb Moon Thiaka's essence, which was the Diluyu syrup, from Moon the Arch to heal Ming Shi. Only Moon the Arch had this ability. Ming Shi couldn't do it now. Each of the 4 kings had a special ability. Moon Thiaka's ability was related to the moon. Anything related to Moon the Arch could be easily used by Moon the Arch. This was an ability that ordinary people couldn't get even if they cultivated for their entire lives. With Moon the Arch there, the Diluyu syrup was not a problem. Moon the Arch let someone come in and help Ming Shi to the window. Then, he gently pointed at the moon. Moon the Arch in the sky seemed to feel something, and a gold thread flew out of the moon toward Moon the Arch. Moon the Arch took out a jade bottle, and the gold thread went straight into the bottle. If one looked closely, the thread that came down from the sky seemed to be some sort of liquid. And that liquid was the Diluyu syrup. After the bottle was filled, Moon the Arch pulled back his power. No more Diluyu syrup came out of the moon. It was like nothing had happened. With the Diluyu syrup soaking Ming Shi's body, Ming Shi's damaged power quickly recovered. Being able to bathe in so much imperial molasses was something that many didn't even dare to dream about. Don't think that being born in the Silver Moon Kingdom meant that one would be able to save up a lot of imperial molasses every 3 months. In fact, even though Silver Moon would drop a drop of imperial essence every 3 months, it wasn't that much. Being lucky enough to get 1 drop was already a stroke of luck, yet he still wanted to use it for a bath? People would think that he was daydreaming if they were to find out. 1 drop of Dilu syrup could make a plant gain intelligence and turn it into a plant spirit. Who would want to use Dilu syrup for a bath? Not to mention the fact that no one could get so much Dilu syrup, even if they could, they wouldn't waste such a heavenly treasure. However, Ming-Shi was doing something that would make people curse him for wasting a heavenly treasure. He was soaking in a tub full of Dilu syrup. The moment the Dilu syrup touched Ming-Shi's skin, it was absorbed into Ming-Shi's skin. The entire tub of Dilu syrup disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, Ming-Shi's spirit became better and better. His pale face became redder and redder while his faint heartbeat became heavier and more powerful. After all of the Dilu syrup was absorbed, Ming-Shi finally opened his eyes. Ming-Shi, who had opened his eyes, immediately recognized that he was in his own room, and he seemed to be in the small bathtub in his room. However, he wasn't soaking in the bathtub right now. Instead, he was sitting in the bathtub, and he was even sitting in the bathtub naked. In front of him stood the white-haired, white-bearded high priest. Ming-Shi's expression was a bit dark. Fortunately, his interspatial ring was still there. He immediately took out a set of clothes and put them on his body in the blink of an eye. Ming-Shi believed that he would never want to experience such a feeling a second time in his life. "Your Highness, you are finally awake." The high priest happily laughed and secretly thought that his prince had such a great body. Miss Fengwu would definitely have a good sex life in the future. Fortunately, Ming-Shi didn't know what this high priest was thinking. If he knew, he would have kicked this person out. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.